Now, say my name.
The Rolling Bad Podcast.
You're goddamn right.
Coming to you almost live from the Strategium in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, it's the Rolling Bad Podcast, episode number 101. It's November 8th, and I'm your host, Elric. My new army will be sexy. Edge. With me today is...
Lord, Bill, my new army gonna be fat like me. Castello.
Oh...
Little bit of a subtle hint as to where we might be going in the future.
Foreshadowing.
Dun, 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 dun. Except our foreshadowing is going to be way better than Game of Thrones. Oh, hashtag too soon. Want to start the show off on a bummer?
Yeah.
We just got the news this morning that Alex Trebek passed away, the longtime 36-year host of Jeopardy, and all-around decent fella.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
36 years.
36 years on a show. And I saw this thing that there was one time where they were doing the most trusted newsmen in America. And he's a game show host, and he made the list.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I don't know. Wife and I watch Jeopardy every day while we're eating our dinner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I was living with my grandma, it was on that and Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, when Pat Sajak goes, too.
Oh, man.
Or Bob Barker. I mean, those are just pop culture icons.
I don't think Bob Barker can die. I think he's a clone. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just going to keep going.
Because there's, no way that he's alive now. Yeah. All right, that's not fair.
Yeah, sucks, but...
Yep. But anyway, so we're moving on.
Yep.
Don't forget that we have the Rolling Bad charity raffle going on.
Yeah.
We've got $275 in the till as of this reading or writing or speaking.
Recording.
There
you go.
And more to come, I hope. Again, every $5 gets you an entry into the draw. And this month's draw is an Indominus box. Now, if you've given this month, if you gave in this first group, you're still going to be entered to win.
Okay, yeah, I think that was something that we should have clarified because there might be people holding back and be like, "Oh, I don't want the Marines and Necrons,
Limited Realm Lord stuff." Yeah, so no, they will carry over throughout the duration of.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, we were probably bad at talking about that. We're gonna do the raffle after the 30th of November. The first show we'll do that raffle, and then everything else, will just go towards the Lumineth box.
Cool.
And what have you? Got to ask you a question.
Oh, God.
GW just put out 3 more reasons to go to your local store.
Right.
One of which is a coin for every $100 you spend.
Yep.
Another one is a free model while supplies last.
Yeah, that went super quick.
Sure did. I mean, there was a line. I happened to be at the store early yesterday.
No,
No, it's so weird. Yeah.
Oh.
But no, I was there, and I was giving Anders a hand, trying to get ready. And there was a line of people because, they'd heard about the free model thing. So, yeah, that was actually, it was interesting to see a line at the door to get in for something that wasn't like the Warhammer Day or, a huge release. So,
right.
Yeah, evidently that tickled people, the idea to get a free model. But also they have a deal to get paint sets. Basically, you buy 9, get 1 free. And what's different this time from the old paint set that they did last Christmas was this year it's the most expensive paint is free as opposed to the cheapest one. So
if you need a big bottle of contrast or what is it, the shades? Those great big shade ones I think are the most expensive.
Yeah,
like
they're
$4.75 a bottle or something. Yeah.
Yeah, the contrasts are even more than that. They're like $7 and something, I think. So
I don't remember. I do know that every time I go in there and buy a handful of paints, and he's like,
it hurts.
$40-something. Good God.
Well, yeah, I mean, but this is a great deal. I mean, someone that's already established and has a bunch of paints on hand probably won't.
Right.
But somebody that's just getting into it, it's a great thing. And it's a draw to get you in the store.
Sure, yeah. And it's also, it's one of those things like if you've been painting, I don't know, so salamanders, right? So say you got a bunch of like greens and reds and blacks
Yeah.
and stuff, and then you want to go in another direction. You want to paint,
Uh-huh.
I don't know, blue-eyed and a deepkin.
Gloomspite.
Or Gloomspite. And you're like, man, I don't have any like blues or
Yeah,
yellows or anything.
exactly.
Like, okay, well, I'll go buy 10 paints, get
Here's
them,
your chance,
get
yeah.
the 10th one free and expand my color collection.
You betcha.
So, and that's what I did for my Zinch. I went in and just bought a whole bunch of blues and purples and pinks.
Yep.
Didn't have any of those colors in my catalog, so.
Yeah, no, you're a kind of a conservative there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grays and black.
Yeah. Greens.
Don't look at me like that, man.
Yeah. And then HeroQuest,
Fully funded.
Kickstarter.
I'm so
Pseudo
shocked.
Kickstarter, because it wasn't on Kickstarter.
It was on Pulse. Yeah, their
Yeah.
internal little thing. And it's such, okay. Soapbox.
Okay.
Rent mode on.
Here we go.
Seriously, Hasbro, did you honestly think you were pulling one over on us and we might make it? Oh my God, I hope we get funded. You've got that stuff in the warehouse already. Shut up. That's not how you operate.
Yeah, so a quick shout out. Kirk did
Yes.
a 4-hour,
Live
3
stream.
hours, 48-minute live stream that was leading up to, it was like an hour leading up to whether or not they would hit the 4 million mark. Because
Yep.
if they hit 4 million, then they would add the dragon.
Yes.
And then it was, I guess, apparently almost 3 hours after that of him just drunkenly rambling about Warhammer and Necromunda and all that stuff.
Kirk?
Yeah, so
I'm so shocked.
yeah, he was super excited to do it, and
Dead
he and
Gamer.
I have been talking about, Dead Gamer. We've been talking about just how hyped we are for HeroQuest to begin with, and I went all in on it because I think that this might be a good way to get my kids more into tabletop gaming, especially my youngest.
Yeah.
And I guess, we can talk about that later in my gaming, but it's really cool. And I'm pretty sure, like you said, they probably have the dragon and all of that stuff.
Oh, I know
already.
they do.
It'll just be, fine, you just didn't get it with the Kickstarter. You'll,
It'll
we'll
just be
charge
an add-on pack. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah, this was a win-win for them. And this is Hasbro. They're not like, oh, man, if we don't make it, we won't be able to afford to do this.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I mean, Hasbro could probably pay off the national debt. So, I mean, they might. I don't know. Maybe they are hungry. Maybe they are going home hungry. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, because I'm sure 5th edition D&D has just been such a blow to them financially.
Yeah, God, what a loss leader that is. Yeah, really.
Nothing but red. We're in nothing but red.
Yeah.
God.
Okay. So, well, actually, they needed the money to pay for the lawsuit from Hickman and Weiss. Oh, can I get in my soap? No, that's totally against the podcast. Oh, yeah, Tracy White or Hickman and Weiss sued Wizards of the Coast.
What?
Yeah, because they were writing a new book, a new, Dragonlance book.
Okay.
And then at the 11th hour, Wizards pulled out. I'm not going to go over the details.
Oh.
You can
All right.
you can go look at the videos, but they're suing Wizards and D&D for jerking them around.
Weird.
Which I think they actually might have a suit, but I also think it might only be the way they can make money because they're not good authors. So
Shots fired. How dare you dig into my
Ching.
childhood like that?
I liked Dragonlance books. I mean, they're a good, fun read. Yeah. I don't look at them as literary expanding the genre. So, anyway,
Everybody's
let's get out there.
entitled to their opinions, Bill.
It is. It's true. And some of them stink, except mine. In corrections and go backs,
Uh-oh.
I kind of want to, we forgot when we were doing the latest episode of The White Dwarf, one of the things we did not mention was the 40K Flashpoint system that is coming out in White Dwarf.
Okay.
And would you like me to describe that?
No. You did your fix. So that's the thing in White Dwarf.
This is how we deliver solid content.
Yeah.
So in the White Dwarf, they have these things now that they're going to be doing, and this is for 40K, and we've seen it before for AOS with the Halost campaign system that they had in there. So they're expanding it to 40K, where over the next series of issues, they're going to be detailing out this new Flashpoint, which is basically it's like a Vigilus or a Nexus. It's an area to play your games in with rules and weather tables. Yes, Steve Foot, weather tables. and, you know, all this other stuff to basically let you have a campaign and a thread that runs through your games, be them narrative or not. And it's really neat how they're going to do it all in White Dwarf, split it up over different issues. And then at some point, I'm sure once they have 3 or 4 of these in the can, they'll release them in a book. You know, it just makes sense.
Yeah, to touch on that, if anybody at GW is listening, it would be really nice if we could get a place where stuff that was in White Dwarf might be accessible online or something, because you know, these Tome Celestant entries with the Squig edition and the Troggoth edition to Gloomspite. Like, if you can't get your hands on that White Dwarf, man, those are some really cool rules, and actually kind of viable in even a competitive sense.
Yes, options
for that army. It would kind of suck if you can't get your hands on the actual White Dwarf to get that stuff. So hopefully, what I would love to see, and I really thought we would get this, is, you know how they would do the like Warcry annual,
the anthology books.
at the end of the year, and it was basically just kind of a collection of what has come out in White Dwarf and stuff like that. That would be sweet if we could get that for 40K and AOS.
I think we will see it.
I think, hope so, man.
You know, I don't think it was primed this year. And, you know, I have to imagine their schedule is an absolute bloody mess.
Yeah.
But I have to believe, like, maybe in December, we'll see more of those compendiums like they did last year. You know, the annual for Kill Team, the annual for this, with a wrap-up of all that stuff. And maybe they'll have this stuff in there.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to see all those Tome Celestants tossed into a pamphlet type, a perfect bound book. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I think on the next White Dwarf, there's like an index. What do they call that? Index of Star Days or something for a new, looks like a Space Marine chapter or something. So kind of like this Tome Celestant, maybe there's going to be stuff like that for 40K as well, which would be really cool.
And yeah, it's just another way to make money. And they're not averse to that, I don't think.
No.
So
all the monies.
Yep. So anyway, that's out there in the White Dwarfs. And last but not least, I think when we covered the 40K Beyond the Veil Crusade mission pack and the 40K Tactical Deployment Mission Pack Master Terrain thing, we might have done those a disservice by just calling them a bunch of extra missions for you to play. And honestly, I was listening to Ashes of the Imperium, Danger Mouse and Steve Foote, and they talk about both of these books, and they go into them quite a bit. So if you really want to nail into what these books or these packets really are, go over and check out Ashes of the Imperium, and they cover each one of them. But there's a lot more to them than just a bunch of missions. For instance, the Beyond the Veil Crusade mission pack is a whole new framework for the Crusade system with new artifacts, and these artifacts are actually different from regular in that they have an unlocked and a locked version, and when you unlock it, it's actually better than the normal version, but the normal version is pretty good anyway. And then there's also a theme that runs through all of the scenarios, so it really ties it together, and there's new battle honors and battle traits and all that stuff for games that are played in that area. And you have to play it in that system because there's also effects in the game. I forgot what they were called, but there's basically negative effects to playing in this area where the stillness is, where the Necrons have started to sap the energy. So there's that. And then for the regular side, the non-narrative side, the tactical deployment thing is a whole terrain system where terrain becomes a part of your army. And before the game begins, you get an X amount of terrain points, and then you select what pieces of terrain go on the board, and then you build the map with the terrain that you've bought. And there's a whole explanation, a system that goes around it, and it's a great way to put together a board that's a little more themey for both players rather than just here's a hodgepodge of terrain and let's try to figure out how to move around it. This actually, like, if I'm bringing a bunch of vehicles, I'm going to want to bring an engine fane. So I'm going to pay the points to get an engine fane. And it's not points from your list. These are terrain points. They're different. But it makes for, it's a little bit of narrative in a competitive game.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I think we can call the intro over, right?
I think so.
Want to go into New Dawn?
Let's do it.
There's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, we don't want to go to war today. But the Lord of the Lash says, nay, nay, nay.
Man, I used to watch that.
Oh my God.
So much as a kid.
Oh, the Lord of the Rings, the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I loved that. Oh, so good.
The Hobbit.
Yep.
And then that pseudo weird live action.
Oh, the last one, yeah.
Yeah.
Where he kind of didn't have the funding, but did it pretty much anyway.
Yeah.
They used rotoscoping for that one. It was so...
What I remember when I was a kid, I would watch that to fall asleep too.
Oh, yeah.
Like almost every weekend, I would throw that on.
Nice.
Good times.
Good times. It is. So let's start out with, I know it's not in this order in the sheet, but let's start out with what was released this week. So for those of you that just love to play solitaire, there's a set of Indomitus playing cards.
Yay.
Well, moving on. So the Spess Wolves and their combat patrol box and their cards and their codex and their dice and that's about it, I think. All that came out. So if you're a Spess Wolf, you are very, very happy.
Yeah.
Even though you have weird teeth and you have serious issues. But
yeah, I watched the Good and the Bad and the Ugly breakdown
Mhm.
on Tabletop Tactics on Space Wolves, and it seems pretty cool.
mm-hmm.
They seem like they went, they made a point of, they went back to being more Viking-ish instead of just Wolfie McWolfersons.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I like that. I mean, I don't mind the wolf theme to Space Wolves.
Yeah.
But their whole shtick a long time was like they're Vikings in space, and then they kind of got away from that.
And they went more towards that werewolf in space thing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of,
Yeah, they've gone back. They got some very cool themey rules.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I've not. Oh, and then the next one is Death Watch.
Oh, yes.
And same thing with the Death Watch. They got their book. They got the combat patrol box. They got dice. Their dice actually look really good.
Yeah, they do.
They're probably some of the best, easiest to read faction dice that I've seen in a long time.
Silver on black is super nice.
And
good contrast.
And the pips are not so, I don't know, themey or whatever that you can't really read them. They're really nice dice. And I have not watched anything on these guys yet.
Yeah.
But I know there's been a lot of complaining.
Some, yeah.
About how, like, the Primaris side don't get special issue ammunition.
Yeah. It hasn't been ported over to the bigger weapons yet.
Yeah, which makes sense because their bolters and everything about them are just better than Firstborn Marines. Anyway,
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that choice too much because you start giving those Primaris-sized weapons with all of their bonuses, and then you start giving them special ammunition.
Yeah, give heavy intercessors special ammunition on top of Strength 5, AP 1, Damage 2, standard bolter. Yeah, it's like
it's going to get crazy.
Bananas.
So, they're not an instant win push-button army, so there's going to be some complaining. Yeah. But I think they went from absolutely laughable to you're going to see people playing this because they're looking good.
That's what you want.
Yeah, with the ability to do, the chapter rules for the individuals, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they got quite the boost.
I am excited and interested to see where these combat patrol boxes go.
And I think these are the new.
Yeah, but so I kind of was like, okay, it's 25 power level in a box. That also translates roughly into like 1,000 or 500 points.
500 points, yeah. Thereabouts.
And I was like, okay, cool. What would that do with some of these other armies? And I was like, oh my God, you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it with like Astra Militarum. You couldn't really do it with even like Tyranids or what was some of the other factions I was looking at. It was just orcs.
I think they will do it.
I hope they do. But then how do you stay around that $140 price point?
Well, I mean, I think that's what's going to be the variance is like when you do the orc one, I know they're going to want to have these boxes come out and fit into a roster. You know,
Yeah, it's this
combat patrol.
It's an
roster.
army ready to go out of the box,
and it meets all the it meets all the force build requirements. So yeah, the orc box might be $10-15 more, because obviously you're going to have more models in it, and like you said, the Tyranids. It's in order to be Tyranid kind of themey, it's going to need to have quite a few Hormagaunts and just X-Gaunts in it. So, yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit more, but the way they're making the value on these things, I think they'll do it. I think they'll make it work.
I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely something I want to see for more than just Marines.
Now, do you want to see this for AOS? Because I sure as heck do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would like to see something in the AOS range that isn't just, here's a bunch of models from this faction, go for it.
Yeah, you know, we've done a start collecting breakdown. I know the guys at Realm and Ruin, they've did a breakdown of all the start collecting 40K boxes and all the AOS ones, like kind of the pros and cons. They are cool. They do help. Some of them really help you get started in an army, but some of them, it's kind of like it's just in a weird amalgamation of models that you'll likely use in a greater scheme.
Yes.
But do they really help you start collecting an army?
Yeah, that's
not so much in some of these cases. So
it's a weird point, and it's a weird way of looking.
Yeah. What they remind me of, and we've seen it as we dig back through these old White Dwarfs, they used to do battle forces back in the day, and they were, back then they were like $110.
Yeah.
And they were basically a true way to start an army.
Yeah, an army in a box.
They came with all the stuff you would need. And a lot of times it was like, here's all your boring-ass core for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or here's all your troop choices that you do. And maybe, a troop choices that you don't want to buy individually, and here's an HQ, and then we'll sweeten the pot with, like, here's a cool heavy, or here's a cool elite.
Something.
But it's a great way to check the boxes on your troop choices. Because I remember, like, the old vampire counts was, like, 20 skeletons, 20 zombies, 20 ghouls.
Yeah.
And a necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, 2 or 3 of these, 2 of these, and I've got all the core of my army out of the way, and then I can go to buying my Vargolf.
You can buy the toys.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I would kind of like to see maybe something like that for AOS going forward. And it would mean that for some of the more expensive armies, not maybe Sons of Bahamut, but some of the more expensive armies, you could actually get a little more in that box than here's an HQ choice and a battle line or whatever. You look at Fire Slayers and Daughters of Cain, I think are a good example of how their current start collecting boxes, they're good. Like for Fire Slayers, obviously you want Hearthguard Berserkers and you want a Magmadroth, but you don't really get much else. Mm-hmm. Granted, yes, the Magmadroth, you can build it in ways that give you a bunch of your characters right there, but that army's so expensive, man, that, like, you're still going to have a long road ahead of you of buying, especially the Auric guys, the more expensive specialized Berserkers, when they come 5 to a box for $50.
Yeah.
Whereas if you dropped like $140 box for people, you could have, I don't know, 20 of the 20 Hearthguard Berserkers, 5 Aurics.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe a Magmadroth on top. I don't know. It's just kind of spitballing. And like same thing for Daughters of Cain. You look at their start collecting box. That is not a very enticing box.
No, it really isn't. And there's no multi-buy on that one, because once you've bought it once,
you might buy it twice so that you can have a Blood Rack Shrine.
A Blood Rack and a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, a Cauldron of Blood. But past that, whereas if you did a box that was like, I don't know, 20 Witch Elves, as some Heart Renders, and a
Melisai or something,
and a Cauldron of Blood for $140, and it's like, okay, if I buy one of those, like, I've got a really solid start to an army.
Yeah.
If I buy 2 of those, I've got an army.
I'm there. Yeah.
Which is how these combat patrol boxes work. Like
Yeah.
if you bought 2 of those Space Wolf ones, man, you're golden. At that point, you're buying vehicles, and dreadnoughts, and fun stuff like that.
And,
so
you're buying the extraneous stuff,
exactly,
to fill out the list choices. And see, this is one of the things I think with the start collecting boxes needs to happen, and they need to look at how they stock their stores. Now, when you look at what's available in the Games Workshop stores, they basically carry some of the big named units, the centerpiece models for an army, the Alariel, the Nagash, the
Mortarian.
Yeah, those things. And then they carry the troop choices, the basic battle line units. And then they'll have a smattering, here's maybe an elite. Here's maybe something, they'll have something that isn't, just battle line or, battle line and leader, behemoth, what have you. If you're going to make these start collecting boxes, don't duplicate what's already on the store shelves. Give me something different so that when I go in there, the manager can look at me and say, if you buy this start collecting box and this box of insert whatever here, you have a really good start on an army and you'll be able to play with all the things that army does.
Yep.
So I think they need to really look at the content versus what the stores carry. And I mean, I know they kind of control what the stores carry.
Oh, very much so. I mean, you see the mountain of stuff that has to be shipped back every time.
Yeah.
And I also think by raising that cap to a much larger force for, another, I mean, really only like another $30 compared to some of the start collecting boxes we have now, you could start including armies that don't have anything like that, like Bone Split is.
Yeah.
So for like $140, you could throw in like 20, well, they're 20 to a box for 50 now. So you could do like 40 foot dudes, 10 boars, and a character.
Yeah.
And that's really like $170 to $180 worth of stuff for 140.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's really putting much of a dent in GW's pocketbook. It's helping the consumer start. I mean, you buy 2 of those for a Bone Splitter's army,
or
a War Clans army.
Yeah.
Boom,
or a Big Wah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an Iron Jaws guy and you want to get into the Big Wah, it's kind of weird right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, there's things they can do, and, I have faith. They'll do the right things, or they'll do the thing that makes them money.
They'll GW.
Yeah.
GW going GW.
They going to go, GW. So, anyway, what else came out? Oh, the new paint handle.
Yeah, you have something to say about.
I would, at this time, like to walk back some of my comments that perhaps I made in jest and in the spirit of funny, ha, and say, I really like the new paint handle.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's a new way to clench it. I'm doing it again. There's like, okay, so there's, see, I'm stumbling. Because,
well, it's more of a beginner one compared to and you could work your way up to the old one, right? Like you would not want to just really.
Oh God!
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right.
On to the new paint handle.
It's really good. It is good.
That thin neck is very, very good because if you hold this paint handle is, I don't want to say design, but one of the nice parts of it is you can like open up your third and fourth finger, put it.
God bless.
Put it around.
Get through it, Bill.
Wrap it
Stay
around.
on target. So basically what we're saying is if you were using 2 fingers before, you could use all 4 now.
Blooper. Basically, you can hold this thing and you can actually split your fingers and have that thing resting in the palm of your hand so that when you are bracing your other hand to do detail work, it's much, much more comfortable. And honestly, until, Anders over at the store showed me that, I don't know why I didn't think of it. It seems so bloody obvious that that's what it's kind of designed around.
I got to say, well, maybe it didn't jump out at you because for some reason the pictures made it look like it'd be substantially bigger than it is. It's a pretty tiny paint hand. Well, I guess it's just more narrow. So But it is longer.
It is a little bit taller.
Yeah.
And one thing, Naomi over at Sword and Steel, she did a video
Yeah, I saw that.
on that. And, she showed how it's actually more stable than the old one. Even though its base is smaller, it is more stable.
Oh, yeah, it puts the center of gravity more towards the bottom.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and it's a lot easier to open up the springs.
Have they said anything about making a bigger one that will hold the larger bases?
What I've done is I've taken some 32 mil bases and glued on some MDF to them so that I can then just use, for the bigger bases, I can just use blue tack and shove it down on there and still use the paint handle.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's all kinds of ways around that. I mean, because these only go up to 40 mil bases, and even that is a stretch. If you watch Naomi's video, it's a stretch to get it on to get it around a 40 mil base. So, but anyway, the paint handle is cool, and I would just now like to walk back some of the. No, I'm not. It's no. Yeah. So also coming out this week is the separately boxed Ragnar Blackmane, Gazgul Thraka, the Outriders, the Hounds of Mordkai. So all those things that were in boxes like Prophecy of the Wolf that you couldn't get before, you can get now without buying the whole Prophecy of the Wolf box. Who knew?
Yeah. Kirk and I were talking about that one too, about how Gazgul was getting up to like $100-some on
eBay,
stuff like that. And it's like, be patient.
Yeah.
He's going to come out.
He's coming out, yes.
Not like there's tons of tournaments and stuff going on right now.
Yeah, because you have to get your Gazgul painted up now.
So, I mean, I get it to an extent. You want it. He is a phenomenal model.
Yep.
And even Ragnar Blackmane is a gorgeous model too. So,
gorgeous.
But, yeah, you got him now.
And then also that released is Blood Quest. It's the graphic novel. It's part 1. Give me part 2. Take my money. Yeah. It's a great audio drama too. So,
I think it's a little frustrating though that the hardbound graphic novels are sold in the store, but they're not selling the comic books.
I know.
It's like
it's
I don't want to have to go into a comic book store to deal with that.
Yeah, because if game stores are weird, comic book stores are crazy.
No,
weird.
it's not that. I don't know. I've had bad experiences. I don't want to get into it, but
show me on Ragnar Blackmane where they touched you.
I would just like to be able to buy all my stuff at one place.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things about like these exclusive Barnes and Noble games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why not stock them in the store too? I know it's exclusive to BN, but come on. Anyway, so pre-orders from this Saturday. So the stuff you can already order. There is a book about Marathi, whatever. And then there's some Broken Realms box set, whatever. Okay, no, I'm kidding.
Apparently, it's going to like fundamentally change Age of Sigmar. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Broken Realms, big deal. Anyway, the Marathi book. First of all, the cover is frightening and awesome.
Yeah, apparently she's got anger issues or something. I don't know. She's got a chip on her shoulder.
I mean, just that whole idea that I love the way they cleaned up the idea. Both models are on the table now. There's none of this. She starts as a human and then she goes into a snake lady and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that was a really cool, nifty mechanic, but it got weird after a while. So now both models are on the table. The wound slough to the other one. When one when it dies, both of them die. But until then, she is is she upset?
Yeah, so
she has anger issues.
They have previewed the Shadow Queen version, which is the big snake queen.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks to be even more disgusting in combat.
Yeah, the points went up. 120 points went up.
But I think it's worth it because she's such a force multiplier now. Yes. Because if you look at her casting side, she's so strong. But when you get rid of that to go into snake mode, you lose like so much of that for her to turn into a combat monster. Now you get all that good magic ability of her in her human or her elf form.
Yeah.
And you get the snake form to run around and bully things. And it's even more powerful in combat. Like I think this is a massive win for Daughters of Cain.
Huge win.
I will say I'm not a fan of the formation where you got to like sacrifice Canary or Melusai to heal wounds on your altar.
But it's very themey.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't think I would ever use it. Maybe you would use it to have the models in a formation.
It's an option, though. I mean, that's the thing is it gives you that option. So.
Yeah, and it is cool that they're focusing on the Canary and the Melusai.
Melusai, yeah. So should we tell the good listeners what you're doing to me?
Let me. We'll do it next episode. Let me prove that I'm serious.
Oh, okay, sure.
Let me. By next episode, my hobby corner will be rich.
Ooh.
Rich with the building and the paintings.
I am intrigued.
Now I know I've done this before, where I've, made lofty goals. Blah blah blah. This is a new direction in the show. I've had 100 episodes to lay out my campaign promises. Now it's time that I have to fulfill on my policy.
Now you have to deliver, my friend, because you know what?
Otherwise, I'm going to get primaried off this show.
The counts are in, and you've won.
All right.
All right. So next episode, we will talk about our new focuses.
I will very hopefully have some cool stuff to talk about.
Nice. So also in the Broken Realm theme, there's 4 box sets. There's Rokar Gresh, which is a group of 3 Chaos Chariots. Drusa Krith, which is an Anvil Guard force. Oh my God, is that beautiful?
Yeah.
There's King Scythus Nematar, which is a group of 3 eel boys. And oh my God.
Oh yeah, the Stormcast, Kaiser Van Bracht, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a substantial amount of model. They're all super old Stormcast.
But
not super old. My God, super old. They're
Yeah.
not even 5 years old.
it's like, whoa, dude. Those are like, they're like
Ancient,
3
yeah.
years. Yeah.
Trying to shove these old casts off.
And doesn't it just show how jaded we are? That
It shows how
those
spoiled we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely spoiled we are.
Oh God, those are so old.
But you get so
Stormcast.
much. You get 10,
Oh my God.
10 Judicators, 5 Sequitors, like a billion Gryphounds and a character
And a character.
for like for $100. I think it's 100.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
Yeah. So don't tell me that Stormcast aren't around the corner.
pretty solid.
Woo.
Will
Train's
touch
gonna-
back on the Anvil Guard box.
Oh yeah.
My first ever Warhammer Fantasy Army was Dark Elves.
Yeah.
And when I saw this box, I was like, oh.
You just went nuts.
Man.
Mhm.
Stupid cities trying to draw me back in. The dragon.
Hashtag Anvil Guard 2020.
No.
Okay.
No. But
2021.
if these aren't limited, are they limited? Do you know if we're only going to have these for a bit?
Don't know. I honestly
hope
don't
not.
know.
I hope not.
No, I hope these are. If this Broken Realms thing is going to be sticking around and it's the new thing,
Yeah.
leading into 3rd edition, then yeah, these things need to stick around a month or 2.
I hope so, man.
Because I couldn't afford to buy them because I bought a Gargant.
Ooh.
My bad. Anyway, also coming out for order is Jaken Bergman.
Jaken Bugmanson. The sweet
We-
new KO character / seasonal model or what?
Yeah,
Is he the Christmas?
he's a brewer. I think he's the Chris. I bet they'll come out with a white. They always come out with a white dwarf, but this guy will be hopefully in addition.
Yeah, and
So-
I guess he's going to have rules
Mm-hmm.
in the game, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's a neat little thing. The Black Library Novella Series 3.
Yeah, I want to
coming
read
out.
some of these.
Some of those looked really, really
Yeah.
good, and they're very themey towards the new hotness. The Shadow and Pain box set. Who cares?
Why you stop it?
What?
Such a good box.
Oh, it's such a good box. Nobody plays those armies. They're like dead. So there's like Chuck Moore and nobody else.
Wow.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Shots fired.
It is such a good box.
This is another Loon Curse. It's
Loon
like another
Curse.
Loon Curse
Yeah.
for Feast of Bones.
Yeah.
So this is, except I think this might stick around longer. This will be more like Wrath and Rapture, which
I
you
hope.
can still kind of get your hands on
Yeah.
depending on where you are, which is Chaos. It was Khorne and Slaanesh.
Corn and Slanesh.
And now this is Daughters of Cain and Slaanesh. And I got to tell you, if you're a Slaanesh player
Yeah.
or want to get into a Slaanesh army, get your hands on one of these.
Yeah.
Get your hands on a Wrath and Ruin, and get your hands on a
Wrath
Start
and Rapture.
Collecting.
Yeah.
Wrath and Rapture, sorry.
And to start collecting. And
Start Collecting and a Keeper of Secrets. Boom.
you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got yourself an army. Conversely, Daughters of Cain players.
Oh, boy.
When this went up for pre-order, the War Scrolls for both the new Daughters of Cain character and the new Slaanesh character
Mhm.
went up. And much concerned because the Daughters of Cain character I really like. I think she's
Yeah.
really strong.
Very.
So, and obviously you get your mitts on her. However, the Slanesh character is all about Hedonite mortals, of which there are 3 in the game.
3. Count them. One hand.
So
What could that mean? Wait. And we have a storyline where Slanesh is potentially being freed. Uh-oh.
are we finally going to get our hands on mortals for Slanesh?
I'm going to go way out on a limb here. I'm
Yeah.
just going to go and say no, not until 2025.
No.
Yeah. This is the teaser of all teasers. And what we're going to see in January, February is going to be a new Stormcast.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's going to be more Stormcast.
We're going to open up a chamber of like snake-bodied, guys. And okay. Yeah, I think they're coming, and I think the freight train is. I'm starting to believe that it might be Hedonites, and I thought 3rd edition starter box would be Stormcast, but maybe they'll get their own. And the starter edition won't be the poster boys. I don't think they'll do it that way. I think the starter box for 3.0 will be Stormcast and X.
Do you want to call it now what the 3rd edition box will be?
Do I want to call it?
Yeah. You say what you think it'll be. I'll say what I think it'll be.
Stormcast Eternals and Slanesh.
Slanesh mortals.
Or something to round out. If they do the mortals early in the year, because I don't think 3.0 will come out till like May, June timeframe, maybe July, with all the COVID production impacts. And so I think maybe it's going to be Hedonite or, a Slanesh flavor and a Stormcast redo. That's
I think both those armies will already be out by then.
Okay.
So I don't think those will be what is in the new box. I think 3rd edition Age of Sigmar will have Gloomspite Gits versus Beasts of Chaos. And both armies will get a bunch of new models.
Wow. You, sir, are reaching. That is a bold, bold move. I salute you. Because the chances of that happening are...
Just saying. Just saying.
Okay, when it comes down and it happens, I'll be suitably impressed. I really will be. That's awesome. Wow. Is that guy smoking something? What? All right, also up for order Saturday was Space Marine Heroes Season 3. Now, these are the grab bag Space Marines.
Yeah.
Which are, here's kind of a beef. I bought into Season 1 until I had every one of them.
Yep.
That cost a couple of dollars. I bought in Season 2 until I had every single one.
Yep.
Cost a couple of bucks. And I've got extras if anybody needs Blood Angels. Now, thankfully, in Season 3, there are 6 models, and you can buy a box that has all 6 models flat out. We're not going to sit there and make you open up 40 of these things to get the one crazy model that, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I bought the 72. I will have all 6.
Good.
And I will probably buy a few grab bag ones because they're very cool looking. Did you see those sculpts?
Oh, yeah. I was tempted to get it. I was like, what are you? First of all, you don't have the money to do this. Second of all, it's Death Guard, and you don't have a Death Guard army. And this will not be enough to actually start a Death Guard army. So I talked myself out of it. But it was very enticing.
They're gorgeous. They're so beautiful. And last but not least, the Black Library Advent Calendar in a smaller format this year.
Yeah.
Which is so nice because someone bought me, the Secret Santa bought me the Advent Calendar last year. And you have any idea how hard that thing is to store anywhere? Because that's a big box.
Yeah.
And right now, I don't have any wall space to put those things up.
I remember you getting it, and it was wrapped. And you were like, oh, my God, did somebody give me, was it like the Necromunda starter or something? Yeah. It was a huge box. And you open it, you're like, holy cow, it's the Black Library Advent.
And it's heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, those prints are so gorgeous.
Yeah.
God, and I'm just dying to looking forward to. Yeah, not dying to look.
You're looking forward to dying?
No, stop.
Oh, I'm just saying.
No. I'm all confused now. All right, and we are going to take a break for some shrimp poor boys. And, we're going to pick up with next week's pre-orders, which isn't really all that much. and then we'll run right into all the other stuff that we do.
Sounds good.
Okay, so like I said, food is done. We had shrimp poor boys. Actually, not bad. The wife did really well. Huh.
Pretty good.
Yeah, she's good with that cooking stuff.
Yeah.
You know. So now on to pre-orders for next week. So stuff you can't get right now, but by the time you listen to this, you will have already ordered this if it's something you wanted to order. So, hey, Blood Bowl 2 and all the trimmings. So everything to do with Blood Bowl is coming out.
Yeah, the models look fantastic.
Oh, my God.
The one that I want to talk about specifically, though, is that Zote.
I knew you'd go there.
That might be the coolest looking model I've ever seen. I'll be picking one of those up.
Yeah, that I think might replace the Zote in the Blackstone Fortress.
Yeah.
And I think it points to, you know, that big question mark Alien Xenos race? I'm calling it now. Codex Zotes.
Yeah, it might be a little premature, but
Think I'm reaching on that one?
yeah.
All right.
I don't see why they couldn't add them, though, eventually
No.
to 40K.
They sure could. And they could be like a wild card.
Yeah.
They could be we don't know whose side we're on. We just know you're all stupid.
Yeah, there you go.
So, one of the things that really caught my eye was the Ravenor Collector's Edition. So, Ravenor is the Inquisitor, worked with Gregor Eisenhorn for a while. Then he got all blowed up, sir. And he became encased in basically a sarcophagus, and it really changed him. But he's still an Inquisitor, and his psychic powers are like off the charts. And he's a really cool Inquisitor. He's really very analytical and very, wow.
And what kind of collector's edition are we talking here?
It's just a book collector's edition. You know, it's signed by Dan Abnett.
Oh, okay. It's like the original Ravenor.
Yeah.
It's a trilogy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 books in that series. But, oh, man, if you liked Eisenhorn, you will like Ravenor. Yeah. So it's amazing. And just the chance to get a nice, beautiful collector's edition. I'm jumping on that. The Solar War softcover. So in line with everything, all those books coming out in hardcover. Now they're coming out in softcover. So if you've been waiting for Solar War, here it comes. Here it comes. Siege of Terra. And also with the Siege of Terra, we got the cloth map for the Siege of Terra. So if you don't know where Earth is, get this map.
I like how you're shifting from Boston to Chicago.
You like that?
Yeah.
Little transition there.
It's the Horus Heresy.
What union is he with?
Yeah,
I don't
right.
remember this Horus fella. Okay. So, yeah, there's a neat-looking cloth map along the same vein as the Sabbat Worlds map for the 10th First and Only stuff. So, yeah, it looks like a really cool... I'm definitely going to pick this up just because it's one of those cool, pretty little things.
Yeah,
It has nothing to do with the books, but it's just neat to have.
The Gotrek and Felix Compendium number 5.
Wow, there's a lot of Gotrek and Felix books.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff is as old as Warhammer.
And I have like all of them.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's a whole box.
Yeah.
Massive box of just Gotrek and Felix books.
Nice.
And Inferno 36 to 45 print on demand.
Yeah. So if you're trying to keep up with those Infernos, the re-releases of the old Infernos, here's your chance.
Yeah.
Order them.
Yeah, I missed that boat.
You know, I used to pick up Inferno reasonable. I mean, I have a few of them sitting over there, but they just never really jumped out at me.
I don't even know what they are.
It's just like stories, you know, some of them are comic book stories. Some of them are just regular fiction. There's articles in there. It's just like
it's like the old Dungeon and
Yeah.
Dragon magazines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just kind of a weird hodgepodge stuff. And I mean, they were usually pretty good, but they never just really floated.
Fair enough.
So that's all the New Dawn and all the little side trips that we took along the New Dawn. So shall we move into creation?
Let's do it.
All right.
Ask, warrior, build. worthy of Mordor.
All right, well, I'm going to jump out there and say, I'm sorry, Sauron. I have failed you.
Yeah, you did.
I did. I got the sum total of nothing done this 2-week period. I was on such a high from recording episode 100 twice that I just couldn't.
Yeah, that did kind of eat into the free time a bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, I didn't get anything done.
Yeah.
Either whatsoever.
We are so bad.
That being said, my next hobby corner is going to be rich.
Yeah, it's going to be beefy this next time because I got a ton of stuff to do, and I have Wednesday off. So I plan to be in this room for like 14, 15, 16 hours and try to knock out some of this building and painting that I have to do. So, yeah.
Very good. Very
right.
good.
That's creation. Hey, Battle. I'm not even going to play the music because
we didn't.
Such a
we
letdown.
Unfortunately, we tried to get some games in for our 40K campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's just unless you and I designate a time and really stick to it, it is really hard to get games in at the moment because of the COVIDs. Unfortunately, we don't have anything here either. Hopefully, no, for sure, the next show.
Yes.
We absolutely will have a game to talk about.
Yes.
It will very likely be another Crusade game from our 40K campaign, but we will have something to talk about.
Yes, for sure. I am so there.
So now that we got that guilt trip
all
out
that
of the way,
I can throw those notes away because they don't apply anymore.
Exactly. We get to bust out the other actual pages of notes we took for our lore section. What's that? We actually have lore to talk about? Yeah. You're just going to leave me hanging while you search on your board for... That's good looking out, Bill. You're making me just sound like a moron.
Oh, my God. Who the hell cares?
I'm trying to think of a good soundbite for going into lore, but honestly, I mean...
How can you do a thing like this? Build up a little boy's hopes and then smash all his dreams to pieces.
That's a good entry for lore.
To touch on that, which will dovetail into something else real quick. I watched that movie again with my youngest, a 4-year-old.
The original one?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's the only one to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And it's by far one of my favorite movies ever.
Mm-hmm.
However, that does go into, I do have some kind of gaming. So for Halloween, I had my youngest. My older kids wanted to go do not trick-or-treating, but they wanted to do this thing with their cousins. So I was like, that's fine. So I had my baby, my 4-year-old, and I was like, man, what do we do? Because we can't go trick-or-treating. And she is like super stoked to get her mitts on some candy.
Well, yeah.
And just do some fun stuff this weekend. So I was like, all right, well, so we trick-or-treated in my apartment. Just the sweetest thing. Like, she would come to each room, the bathroom, the kids' room, and my room, and knock on the door, and I would open it and give her candy. She was dressed up like a witch. But to touch on the gaming part, to fill the night, I played D&D with her.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, with a 4-year-old. So obviously it was not full on D&D. I was trying to scream at her to figure out THAC0 and
like, you know what you need to roll. Just get with it.
That is not what you would do if you were lawful good. Oh my, go to your room. Learn to play your alignment. That's the only thing this game matters on. Anyways, no, so it was very simple. It was just roll a die. And it was also kind of like to get her to identify numbers and whatnot. So it was so cool. It was frustrating. It was all kinds of stuff. Because a 4-year-old is packed full of imagination. Like, she has not had her brain rotted by a cell phone yet, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So she has like all these crazy cool ideas. But what was really interesting about it was trying to get that into a cohesive story to move forward with. She didn't really know how to do that because she's used to just like, well, I want to play this game in my head now. We'll run around acting like we're dogs. And then 2 minutes later, it's like, oh, we're going to be cats. And then 2 minutes later, it's like, oh, we're going to be, I'll be Elsa and you be Anna from Frozen. And I'll just, it's like this concept. It's like, no, let's try to keep this train going on one specific story. And just seeing her try to understand that. And it was interesting because it totally derailed the imagination at times.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
Yeah, it was fun, man. It was really cool, and I'm hoping that I can keep it going with her because I have 3 kids. She's the youngest. My 2 older ones don't give a crap about D&D or game, literally anything that's not flipping TikTok on their phones. It's the only thing they ever care about anymore is their stupid ass phones. So I'm hoping maybe I can plant the seed with her, because she doesn't like. She'll sit there and watch something on my phone for about like 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then she wants to go play. She wants to do something else.
Yeah.
So there's hope there.
There's
maybe
a shred of hope.
It would just be I always get so jealous when I see people who have kids that are super into what they're into, because my kids don't care about like any of my interests. So yeah, it'd be cool if maybe she's the one that does it,
catches it. Yeah,
it was kind of my gaming.
Nice,
not miniature related, but
it was worthwhile.
Playing pseudo Dungeons and Dragons with a 4-year-old. She was a fairy princess trying to deal with goblins kidnapping fairies out of sprites out of the kingdom.
Nice.
So fun time.
Nice. Did you hit her with like a dragon, elder red dragon?
No, not yet. Not yet. Yeah, the goblins sacrificing her people in a demon summoning scenario. Ritual. That's where it kind of fell apart. She was like, "Yeah, I want to do something else now." Like, I almost had her. So, yeah, it was a good time. So, anyways, nice. You playing that clip just totally brought all that back into my head.
Nice.
So, lore,
what are we gonna do?
So, I presented this idea, and you thought it was cool. So, you fed my ego. What we want to do going forward is a segment where we take a faction and then we throw a grand alliance at it.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're going to do Destruction versus Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And what we want to do is take a look at the 4 factions within the Grand Alliance of Destruction and how they have interacted with Ossiarch Bone Reapers in the lore.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to take a look at how those 4 factions can take on Ossiarch Bone Reapers competitively on the tabletop.
Yep. And we kind of split this up a little bit so that we didn't, do the same research and what have you. You focused a lot more on the lore, and then I focused on the high-level strategy ideas of what makes OBR good and bad, and then how do the factions fight that. And then you're going to go and delve down into the tabletop tactics that will allow those factions to use that strategy to some effect.
Now, full disclosure, when we get to Sons of Bahamut, obviously it's a brand new book. And so as far as like the competitive aspect goes, like it's all just theory hammer.
Right.
It's like, and we may be very wrong. I think people might be very wrong with this army of being kind of hard on it, that it may not perform. It may very well do quite well. Hopefully it does, because on the table they look gorgeous.
Yes, they do. I'm just getting my Sons of Behemoth book, and I was going to open it up for so everybody could know. And oh no, it's in shrink wrap.
Oh, you're not going to open it because
No.
it's in shrink. Oh, Bill,
I can't open it. It's in shrink wrap. You know how much the value goes down when you take that shrink wrap off? Don't look at me like that, man.
I can't even.
All right.
So,
but I did buy a Gargant today.
You did?
I did. You were there.
I witnessed it, and I got a Daughters of Cain coin for it.
Yes, you did.
For being your state-verified witness.
Yeah. So talk to me about the lore of Destruction versus the OBR.
So anything in general versus, well, not anything in general. Chaos and Order-ish have a substantial amount, if you will, of lore against Ossiarch Bone Reapers. Obviously, the whole Wrath of the Overchosen book is about Catacross throwing down with Archeon. And then the Ossiarch Bone Reaper book itself has a lot of interaction between... Because, death fighting Order has just kind of always been a thing. It's where they harvest all their souls and whatnot. So, as far as, like, the two that there is essentially nothing for is Gloomspite Gitz and Oricor clans.
Yeah.
Both those books came out before Ossiarch Bone Reaper. So obviously there's nothing really in there. There may be like very, very subtle hints maybe, but I don't think so. And then as far as looking at it from the Bone Reaper's perspective, there's nothing specifically against them either.
Yeah.
So that leaves us with Sons of Bahamut and Ogre Mo tribes. And I will refer to them as Mo tribes because that's just stuck in my head. So
What
bear
we do,
with me.
we mow down everybody.
Yeah, that's a nod back to Elvia when Mo tribes did very bad things to me.
Show me on the ogre where the
Oh god,
ogres
everywhere,
touched you.
everywhere. Some places twice. So for Sons of Bahamut, if you go into the Sons of Bahamut Battletome, get it together, Bill.
In the painting handle place?
Yeah. They were not gentle with the painting handle place. My hands, they were rough on my hand. Yeah,
Right, because you paint with the painting handle.
I slide it between my fingers. Sons of Bahamut. If you look at the Battletome on page 28, it means you got to take the shrink wrap off, Bill. Are you going to do it?
Live.
I get to witness this.
Can you hear that? Can you hear that?
I can hear you hitting the microphone. Oh, that's just so good for the listeners.
Yeah. I'll edit that part out.
That's AOS ASMR.
Yeah.
Ay.
Hey, we delivered it first.
There you go. I want you to open to the middle of the book and sniff the pages. That's the first thing. Yes. Just inhale that overcosted page ink. Drink it in.
Hey.
All right. Sons of Bahamut, Battletome, page 28. This is really the only entry of Gargants versus Bone Reapers. And in it, we talk about One-Eyed Grunnock, who is one of the special allied mercenary characters that you take as a Gargant when you put him in Chaos. I think he's the
Chaos,
he's the Gatebreaker.
Yeah.
So in here we have a battle taking place at the Ivory Tower, which I believe is going to be connected to the Ivory Host, which is something that we'll talk about more in the Bone Reapers perspective. And this is in the realm of Gur. Caradron overlords are trying to oust the Osiarch Bone Reapers from the Ivory Tower. We have a battle going on between the two of them. It's pretty nasty, and it's fought to essentially a stalemate. Eventually, the overlords and the Bone Reapers decide to cut a deal in which the overlords will have access to the ether gold in the sky, and the Bone Reapers will have access to the bones on the ground.
It's almost like the pact with the Ogre Maw tribes.
Yeah, so this is a theme that is really strong throughout the Bone Reaper book. Now, as they're getting ready to pin this deal and sign it, climbing up the mountain is then Grunnock Battlecrasher. This is before he's known as One Eye. And he tops the mountain and begins just smashing everything. KO and Bone Reaper alike.
He's got attitude issues.
To the point, yeah. And apparently, right as the Liege Cavalos and the Admiral are getting ready to put their John Hancocks on this thing, he smashes both.
Oh.
So talks immediately break down between both sides. They start shooting and fighting old Grunnock. They crack his skull open and knock his eye out, and that's how he becomes Grunnock One Eye. And they chase him off. So, yeah, peace talks obviously fell through between both sides, and war plagues the area.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about real quick about this, too, is how we're finally getting to a place, it feels like in AOS, where references to places and things are adding up between books instead of it just constantly being this like so-and-so did this thing at such and such place. And it's just like firing info off into the ether. Yeah. It's like, I don't care about any, none of this makes sense.
And the names I don't know.
Yeah. And you'll never mention them again. It's like, well, now that we're actually fleshing out some of these realms, it's giving us actual locations that we can keep hearkening back to.
Yes, and when they say this thing and this guy was over at this oh, I know where that was. Yeah.
Yeah, so that hopefully, 5-10 years from now, we'll have it so much more established. It'll be much more like the old world when they were like in Kislev or, in Sylvania.
And you can
stuff. Yeah, what they're talking about.
See it.
Exactly.
As well as still having 10 times that area to play your own games in.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Sorry.
So, that's the Sons of Bahamut. It was really just a snippet at the bottom of the page.
Sure.
In the Ogre Maw Tribe's book, the Battle Tome, at page 21, there is a part in their like timeline where it talks about the Age of Myth, the Age of Chaos, and the Age of Sigmar, where it notable events that happen. And in this one, we get what's called the War of Bones. And this is a snippet that is expanded upon in the Feast of Bones.
Oh, greatly,
box that came out. And this is a fight between the ogres and the Bone Reapers, in which the Bone Reapers from the necropolis of Kartok, they had a treaty with the Tarkan Wargalet over what is called the Endless Boneyard.
Yeah.
How rich of an area for somebody like the OCR Bone Reapers to have a place called the Endless Boneyard.
Yeah, I want to live there.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you know.
So the agreement was that anything that wandered through the boneyard, the ogres could eat, but they had to leave the bones. Pretty simple.
It's a win-win for everybody.
And again, we have another example of how the Bone Reapers like to enter these contracts. And sure enough, the ogres got greedy, gluttonous. Oh.
Well, actually what happened is the ogre boss's son actually killed him because they were like, why can't we eat everything? And it's covered in the Feast of Bones little book. And he's like, I think we should be able to eat everything. To hell with this restriction. So anyway, it was a dad-son alpha male thing.
Oh, yeah.
He ends up killing dad.
Cadric Kin Eater?
Yeah, that's why he's Kin Eater, is he eats his dad's guts.
Oh, wow.
Becomes the boss, and he's the one that breaks the treaty.
Ah, okay. And then he consumes all the bone mass he can get his mitts on as he marches towards the necropolis of Kartok. And apparently Vokmartian is dispatched to have to deal with him. They beat the ogres and push them back, but they're still there. And, of course, now we have a never-ending battle between the Bone Reapers and the gluttonous ogres.
And what's interesting in the Feast of Bones in the book that came with the box, they basically leave the story right there as Vokmartian goes out there. This new tyrant, Kin Eater, is in charge, and things don't look good for the home team, folks. And that's where they end it, because from then they move on to the scenarios and all this stuff, and they basically say, now you decide how it ends.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's from the Destruction books perspective. Then if we go into the OCR Bone Reapers book, there's really not a lot in here either, unfortunately. It really focuses on their fights with, mortals. And when they refer to mortals, they basically mean humans. Whether they side with order, whether they side with chaos, whether they're sycophants of Nagash. It doesn't really matter to the Bone Reapers. They just want them bones. So, but there is references in that on page 29 and 81 of the Ivory Host. Now, this is a specific faction that you can actually play, like the Praetorian elite or the Petrifex elite, those guys. Yeah. So they have rules and everything, which is really cool. These guys are led by the Monarch of Tusks, Guri-Za, the Drake Slayer Queen, and they are based in Gur at the Ivory Tower, or wherever that is exactly. I don't know if they have that on a map yet or not.
I think it is. I think when I saw the map of Gur, I think it is one of the big things.
Cool.
A landmark.
Well, their mission is very simple: to conquer Gur. That is all they're there for.
Well, alrighty then.
So pretty straightforward. Now, one of the cool things about these guys is they take their bones from the beasts that they slay. However, it does not specify if those bones, if they mean like the great big monsters that inhabit Gur, or if it's like the actual orcs that they fight, the Gits that they fight, the ogres that they fight. There's no reference to if they can actually build constructs out of these other races. And I think that's kind of important because I think it also talks about how like Nagash can't pull souls out of them either.
Right. Yeah.
So they're kind of the ultimate rock to the scissors of death is destruction.
Yep.
Which is cool. And then also they even kind of have rules that reflect this as they use the bones of beasts in Gur to recraft their armies. It takes the wild energy of Gur into them. And if their bones crack open in battle, they basically enter rage mode. They hulk out as skeleton warriors. And they go from being these like super phalanx disciplined warrior elite skeletons to just being undead berserkers.
Wow.
And the rules actually somewhat reflect that too, which I think is really cool. I think they actually did a pretty solid job with some of the narrative, because you also have like the crematorium, which are skeletons that explode because they're from the realm of fire and stuff. Then you have these ones from the realm of Gur that are infused with just the wild bestial energies of the realm. So it's really cool. I did find a very interesting contradiction that kind of keeps flipping back and forth in the OCR Bone Reaper book, in that, this literally happens on page 2 to page 3. Huh. Page 2, it talks about how they have to be very conservative with their bone mass, and they have to constantly keep taking in new bones because it's a finite resource.
Yeah.
That they have to be careful with. And then literally in the next page, it talks about how they will throw away entire armies into the opponent's arrows and ranged attacks just to whittle them down so that they can. And it's like, well,
wait a minute.
Hold on. It's because they can just reharvest the bone matter. And it's like, well, if you can constantly just keep taking new bone.
Yeah.
And using the same stuff, then you have essentially a limitless supply. But then later on in the book, they go back to being like, it's this super rare resource, and that's why we got to be such sticklers about the weight. And then you flip a few more pages, and they're like, we're an endless horde. We are legion. I'm like, okay, well, which is going to be there, guys? You know, like we can't afford to have our dudes blow up in flame because we just can't get any more of those. You know, these are limited edition.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I thought that was kind of a funny waffle back and forth throughout the OCR book.
Just a little weirdness. Yep.
So from a narrative perspective, that's kind of
Yeah.
where destruction queues up against Bone Reapers. Again, you know, there's not a lot because Bone Reapers are a pretty new book.
Yeah, and they have focused a lot on versus
Right.
Stormcast and versus
Chaos. Well, you know, I mean, they
Yeah.
have a whole campaign book.
Yeah.
Based around that. And, you know, and then when you look at Ogres and when you look at Sons of Bahamut, the two newer destruction books that have come out with and since, again, they just focus so much more on mortals. Like the focus is like how they constantly deal with Stormcast or with the cities or with the Scourge of Chaos and stuff. And I get it. And it almost makes you wonder, like, we always get the mortal perspective of the realms, regardless of which army we're talking about. So I think, and we're seeing it now in 40K with how, like, one of these new Advent calendar books, what are they? Not the Advent calendar book, but the series of 5 books that's coming out that you pre-order this week. The Black Library novella series.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right.
One of them is an orc book.
Yeah.
And they've kind of been doing this where they write from the 40K orc perspective. They've done it with Eldar and stuff like that. So we might start getting some of that in the AOS side, which would be cool.
I hope so.
You know, where it's not constantly from the mortals realm, mortals perspective. So, in fact, well, there's the Bone Reaper book in that novella series.
Yes.
So it might detail some of that.
Flesh it out. And, you know, it's one of the things that really humanized up the Necrons is to start hearing some of these things from their point of view.
Right.
I mean, there's actually they're not just soulless machines tromping from world to world. There's an actual method to their madness, and they have a plan, and they have politics, and, you know.
Well, and I think I get that it's written from a mortal perspective so that it gives you something to identify with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually listening to the latest episode of The Painting Men, and they were talking about how disinterested they are in Stormcast because it's like this 8-foot tall superhuman that can't die, who only remembers like a snippet of their personality, and it's like just enough to infuse them with rage so that they'll fight again until they die. And you can't really identify with that.
Right.
Whereas if we start getting some of these newer books that are written from that perspective, it can kind of humanize these other factions in a way that we might be able to identify with them, and it makes them more interesting. And they certainly have done it with Space Marines over the last 10 years, making them far more interesting characters.
Well, and that's why I go back to that, the first Mark book with Nave Black Talon. It's the first book I've read that actually made me give even the slightest amount of a damn for a Stormcast character.
Oh, yeah.
Because, all of that Gardas Hammerhand stuff, all of that early stuff,
Vandus,
I could
Vandus,
whoever. I mean, that's just it. I can't even remember the guy because he is so drab. He is so colorless, and he's just an idiot. And
even Gardas wasn't. I mean, he traipsed through the Garden Nurgle, but
But I mean, the sole reason for being there was idiocy. So, but with Nev Black Talon, you actually got somebody who had feelings, who had thoughts, who had actual, honest to God reasons for doing things. And, it was obviously what the writer was given as a purview. And I'm not saying that those original books were bad because of that, because they were telling a much broader narrative, and you're not going to focus on one guy. But I think that did a disservice to the Stormcast from the beginning, because really we just thought of them as empty suits of gold armor.
That was something that they took forever to answer too. It was like, what's inside the what's in the box?
Is there a guy in there, or is there just a soul trapped in a gold cage?
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of liked it better when it was just like an animated suit of Sigmar's energy. Kind of like the Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, they took off their helmet and it's a dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
So much for rubric. Anyway.
Fair enough.
Anyway, let's move on.
So now we will try to analyze to the best of our ability how the various destruction factions try to tackle the unrelenting legion that is the Osiarch Bone Reapers.
Yes. So in order to do that, one of the things that we're going to have to get is a baseline. And a lot of this you may have heard before, or it might be the first time. Who knows? But we're not going to shy away from it anymore. Haha.
Yeah.
But we're just going to cover what makes the OBR really, really good and what's bad about them, and then some general ideas of how to fight them. So on the pro side for the OBR, hey, they're immune to battle shock.
Yeah.
So one entire piece of the game is gone for them. They don't worry about melting away, which is awesome.
That doesn't mean that like their bravery doesn't come into play.
Right.
When there's things that say roll against their bravery.
No, they have a characteristic.
Yeah.
So
it just means that when the battle shock phase rolls around, they're just like, cool story, bro.
They're not going to be wasting command points on, what's his name?
Oh, the auto pass?
Yeah. So, but then again, we'll get into that here in a second. Another thing about them is they have absolutely great debuffs, especially to bravery, which if you're coming after them with a destruction army is really going to be painful, because most destruction armies have low bravery to begin with.
Yeah.
And lowering it ain't going to help much. So that's a huge thing in their favor. Another thing is they have great buffs for themselves. They not only do they self-buff, but their army-wide buffs are really, really nice. They're super durable. I just wrote on the sheet here, I was like, in the pros column, Mortec Guard and Murder Ponies, which are the Cabalist Death Riders.
Oh, yeah.
Those are advantages by themselves. Mortec Guard are one of the best battle line units, in the game.
Absolutely.
And they're probably in the top 3, if not the best.
They're up. They're definitely up there. They're very, very strong.
Very strong. And they're flexible in how you build them, so you can make sure that a 20-man unit, everybody fights.
Yeah.
And they can get stupid. Even without the Petrifex thing, they're pretty damn good.
Well, they come on 25s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if you just have the swords,
you're still getting 2 ranks.
Yeah, the 2 ranks. Then if you give them the spears, man, that's 3 ranks. So you can do units up to 40.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to get most of that 40 into a combat swinging.
Or you can have the 2 ranks deep and then have somebody with a 2-inch reach behind them saying snicker snack patty whack.
Yep.
You know. So another thing that's huge about this army is they have no reliance on heroes. Every unit has its own built-in hero. So whereas like with Night Haunt, you have to do bubble management and you have to think about where your guys are in order to get your different buffs and your saves. These guys just have it naturally. You can send off a unit off by itself in a corner of the board, and it's just as good as if it was right there near the boss. So, these guys are these guys are badass.
They are a very strong army.
Mm-hmm. Another big pro for them is everything is at least 3 up to hit, with buffs taking that even lower. So to see 3 up is normal, and you're going to see some 2 up and 1 ups to hit. So it's just nuts. Absolutely nuts. Another big plus for them is Nagash and Arcan are part of the list. So you may end up seeing a super magic heavy army when you see OBR. It might not be just a bunch of bony guys. It might be some serious stuff. Their endless spells are just like Seraphon. Well, actually, I almost want to say better because they're soul linked to the OBR for the same cost. So nobody messes around with their endless spells.
You don't have to worry about it coming back through your lines.
Yeah, it's yours and you play with it only. And then they have the Deathless Warriors, which is basically the same thing as Night Haunt. It's Deathless Minions. Different name, but it's a 6-up feel no pain. And their Unstoppable Advanced Command ability. We're going to get into this with the cons, but basically it's a slow army. But if you have enough RDPs, which are... Oh, and I didn't cover the other thing about these guys. They use relentless discipline points and not command points.
Right.
So any tricks you have that mess with the enemy's command points you don't care. Because these guys generate relentless discipline or RDP points, and that's what they use to do their, command abilities. And one of their command abilities is to give an extra 3-inch movement with a run or a charge. So it's nuts. Now, the cons for the OBR, on the other hand, they don't have any allies. No one likes them, probably because of who they are. They have no way to deal out mortal wounds. Well, very few ways to deal out mortal wounds. There's a couple of spells and a couple of, like the Crematorian Legion is going to, if you see Crematorians, you're going to see some mortal wounds, and anything with Cavalos, like the Murder Ponies, you're going to see mortal wounds, but mostly they're not going to be doing mortals like some of the other armies hand out. And the reverse of that is they have no way to deal with mortal wounds. They have no shrugs, no sloughs, no on a...
They have their 6-up.
Well, I mean, yeah, they have their death save.
And that's pretty much it. There's not, artifacts really and other things to protect you too much. Mortal wounds will definitely catch you out.
They're very susceptible to mortal wounds. Yeah. So anyway, the army is slow. There's no 2 ways around it. You can make them fast, but it takes too many of your points and it takes too much effort. So basically this army is going to be slow. If they don't deploy right, they're going to lose games just because they can't get to the objectives, period.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it bites into your RDP management to give them speed. No,
Bites hard.
The Death Riders have a little bit of... they're 12-inch, but we're talking about like Mortek Guard, which should generally be the backbone of your army, and trying to shuffle those dudes around.
Well, yeah, and your Archai, your Morghast Archai are going to be moving at 12 or 16. So there are units that move really, really fast. But by and large, the bulk of the army, the things that are going to hold objectives are slow.
Especially when we start talking about some of the more competitive lists.
Yeah. For another con for the OBR is shooting. What's that?
Yeah.
I mean, they have the Mortek Crawlers, which a lot of good lists are built around one or more Mortek Crawlers. They're swingy, and I don't think they're a guaranteed win. And honestly, going up against Destruction, well, we'll get into that later. But And they also have no protection against shooting. So that's another thing that they're very vulnerable to. If you have a shooty army, they're just going to sit back and take it. They're not going to deal it back out. They're not going to reflect. Nothing. So Caradron Overlords, have at them. They don't have any tricks. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but when you read the book, when you read the print, that's what you get. There's not a lot of weird synergies that you put together that are like, oh, I unlocked this and it's amazing. Nope. Pretty much if it's in black and white, it's what they do.
Yeah, well, there's no real, like, shenanigans.
Yeah, they don't have movement shenanigans. I mean, one wizard has a spell that, you know, once you beat up on him a little bit, he can teleport. Okay, yeah, that's not real hard. But, I mean, basically they don't have any, they're not Daughters of Cain where if this happens, then this unit just goes into murder mode.
Yeah.
So their magic is very, very average, and it consists mostly of buffs and debuffs. So if you're a non-magic army, like a lot of destruction builds are going to be, you're not going to get built. You're not going to get beat in just the magic game.
Well, see, I'll push back on that one a little bit because I maintain that the better magic in the game is based around enhancing your unit. Because you throw a damage spell out and it does like 3 mortal wounds. Mm-hmm. I would much rather have a spell that takes my 30-man unit, increases their damage output by 16%.
Oh, sure.
Then
give me a +1 to hit any day.
Yeah, or reroll wounds or what, stuff like that. And that's where their buff debuff magic comes in pretty strong. Handy. Yeah. So I think that's not bad. They don't have a lot of like really damage.
Yeah, but you're not going to get Tzeentch bolted off the board. You're not going to
get. I mean, that's kind of what Tzeentch has to do because they don't really have a lot of combat,
right,
and stuff like that. So.
But again, it's something that you don't worry about that with destruction you do worry about with almost every other army.
Wow.
Is it's going to paste you to death with the magic. So, low model count army. It's an elite army. This is what Stormcast should have been, but they haven't died yet. So, I mean, it's just one of those. This is an elite army done right. It's not a super high. I know people are talking about 40 bricks of Mortek Guard and all that stuff. When you think about it, sure, 120 Mortek Guard on the table is scary. But number one, they have to get them there. And number two, they will survive. But once you start wailing on them, they do die. And they will go away. And we'll talk about how that works. So in general, the way you want to fight against OBR, if you're a destruction player, any one of the 4 factions, it's going to be an uphill fight. Just get used to that idea. They have almost as good of a melee potential as you do, and in some cases better. So it's going to be a slog. You have to use your speed because most destruction armies are significantly faster than the OBR. So yeah, you have to use that speed. You have to use all those tricks that you can use to get there firstest with the mostest. And of course, it goes without saying, shoot them. You don't want to be tar pitted. You don't want to be tied up with OBR units. You want to shoot them again, and then shoot them again. Just shoot them until they die. Do never let yourself get tar pitted.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is going to be interesting to talk about because destruction is not really known for its shooting.
Well, I mean, but they do have it, and what they have is usually pretty effective, and it's usually in tandem with what a unit of 20 yard boys or arrow boys, that's not bad. I'll take 60 shots. After a while, weighted dice gets you.
Yeah, that is true.
Remember to retreat when you're in combat and you don't want to be there. Don't forget, you don't have to be there. Retreat. Hell, a lot of destruction units have retreat and then charge, or you can give them retreat and charge in some way, or just retreat. You don't need to sit there and hang out with those Mortek Guard and get wore down. Get out of there. Another big way to beat them is if they don't set up properly, make sure you punish them for it. Make sure you crush them. And the next thing is going to go without saying, an AOS coach will probably be happy about this, but shoot the flipping heroes. The way they generate their RDPs is with heroes.
Yeah.
And if you can start wailing on that number and wailing on their heroes give them significant buffs and advantages. And when you start taking those away, they become easier to deal with. So shoot the freaking heroes. And again, try to do a battalion if you can, or multiple battalions. Get down to 1 or 2 drops so that you can outdrop them and get that first turn so you can do your alpha strike with all of your toys. Because if you let them go first, get their buffs up, get all their stuff together, and get on objectives, it's going to be really tough. Really tough. So try to get that 1 drop, 2 drop, whatever it takes to win that phase and go first. So that's it for the general OBR stuff. Now, let's get specific.
So, big shout out to AOS Dan, who has been posting on Twitter tournament results and whatnot. And I kind of combed through the OCR Bone Reaper lists that have been coming in the top spots, podium finishes and whatnot. And they all seem to have one very specific thing in common. They are all built around Catacross.
Oh, man. I was going to say Morghast Arkai, but
yeah.
All right, whatever.
So, kind of, you're going to look at a competitive aspect of how to beat Bone Reapers. You kind of have to look at how to beat Catacross.
Catacross, yeah.
And he is no joke. He's 500 points. In combat, he is an absolute beast because it's him and a bunch of his buddies on a great big base.
Sure.
He's 20 wounds with a 3-up save.
Yeah.
And he has a command ability that projects a 36-inch bubble that gives everything in it an additional 1 to their save. So he's at a 2-up.
And he's in like a 6-inch base.
Yeah.
So don't forget that he's projecting that across the board. He's hitting almost every unit.
Now, you have to be wholly within that
Wholly
bubble.
within it, sure.
But that's a big bubble.
That's a big bubble.
And if you take him as Petrifix Elite, he's automatically rerolling 1. So he would just come in as a 2-up, rerolling 1 armor saves. That being said,
as good as a Bastillodon.
That being said, he does not have mortal wound protection.
Nope.
Other than the 6-up save that the army gets.
Yeah.
So you can try to slap him around with some spells. That is an option. He's also slow.
Oh,
he
yeah.
only moves 4 inches, so he can't be everywhere all the time to fight.
And once he's committed, he's committed.
Yeah.
So that's where I was going is if your opponent sets up badly and puts Catacross in a bad place, make him pay for it. You got to.
Now, normally on something that's this expensive and this slow, the best approach would just be to ignore it. And go after the rest of the army. But he's such a force multiplier that it's hard to ignore that. Catacross automatically generates 3 RDP every turn. He, again, has the 36-inch bubble for a command point. He ups everybody's save. It does something else, too. I can't remember off the top of my head. He's such a force multiplier because he has a command ability that, yes, it gives you the additional armor save by 1, but it also increases your hit rolls by 1.
Yeah.
Which, again, 36-inch bubble. As long as it's normally an 18-inch, but as long as the prime Necrophorus is alive, it goes to a 36 inches. So he is such a force multiplier that it's really hard to just ignore him. Yeah. Again, his command ability is a 36-inch bubble that, again, increases the armor save by 1, but it also adds 1 to the hit rolls for everybody that's within. Normally it's an 18-inch thing, but the prime Necrophorus, which is one of the characters on the base, increases it to a 36-inch thing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the cool little things about the Catacross model is that it's him with a bunch of his buddies, and as you do damage, his buddies die.
Yeah,
he's the last one.
The thing about it is that Prime Necrophorus is the first one that dies. So you can drop that 36 to 18 with, by the time you get the 4th wound, he's gone. He's the first one that dies.
Yeah.
So it's super important to knock those 4 wounds off of him as soon as you can.
So, yeah, if you have long range shooting, which again is kind of hard to get,
or
destruction,
impact hits, thunderous charges, things like that. I mean, it could be worth throwing a Mornfang pack at him, knowing that they'll go away, maybe to do those couple of 3 wounds or to chip away at him. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. He also has the ability to increase the attacks characteristics of a unit by 1. He's just such a force multiplier. When you would normally get your command point at the beginning of your turn on a 4-up, they turn that off.
Yeah.
And he just picks at the start of the OCR Bone Reaper hero phase, he picks an enemy unit anywhere on the battlefield. They subtract 1 from their hit rolls. I mean, it's, so again, he's really hard to ignore because he has essentially such table-wide reaching abilities. So while you may not get into combat with him anytime soon, he's still going to be reaching out and affecting the table.
Yes.
So it's hard to ignore him. So, and another thing that a lot of these lists also centered around was having 2 more tech crawlers, which are the bone catapults. And these are really good. They have no AP, but they're 3 shots, range 6 to 36. I'm sorry, no AP. No rend. Wrong game.
40K.
Yeah. And they're flat damage 5 on their basic shots. So if you're playing something like Gloomspite or even Sons of Bahamut on your man crushes that only have a 5-up save, 3 of those hit you, and they hit on like 3s, wound on 2s, I think. Pretty consistent.
Yeah.
And if they're within his bubble, of Catacross's bubble, they're hitting on 2s. So 2s and 2s, damage 5, even without Ren. Pretty scary to go up against. You could drop a Man Crusher somewhat consistently every time you fire one of those things.
Yeah.
And if you got 2 of them, you better believe you could drop one every turn.
Sure.
So that's an issue. And even on something like Ogres, your regular Gluttons only have a 5-up.
Yeah.
So
they have t-shirt saves.
Yeah, 15 damage gets through. That's 5 dead ogres, man. That's for real. You're really starting to lose
4 and
some.
a third, but
Oh, they're 4 wounds a piece.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So either way,
I mean, but that's a huge part of your.
Yeah. And you don't want to be losing bodies as an ogre player.
No.
So the other big thing that these lists tend to revolve around is Bone Reapers almost take kind of like a Death Star approach. You take your battle line. And then because their battle line are so good between the Death Riders and the Mortek Guard, you kind of pick which one you want to lean into.
Yeah.
You can, and some of these lists have like 15 Death Riders, a unit of 15 Death Riders, which kind of gets around the issue we were talking about earlier, the lack of speed. Because their base move 12, and they are 3 wounds apiece. Like, they're for real. They do a lot of damage on the charge.
Yep.
Just base. That's before you start putting RDP and other stuff into
and
them.
Buffing them up.
Yeah. The other approach that some people take is like a big 40-man unit of Mortek Guard. Again, like we were saying, probably one of the best battle line in the game.
Yep.
And you pour a handful of RDP into them every turn, they just get exponentially better.
And with just a couple of buffs from some of the leaders, some of the characters, you can make them nigh unkillable.
So the question becomes, because Destruction as a whole tends to focus around combat. They are a very combat-centric Grand Alliance. And, I mean, there is some magic, like in the case of Gloomspite, and even Ogres have some pretty respectable magic. There is some shooting. Ogres have some fairly solid shooting. And, again, Gargants, depending on which tribe you go with, can actually have a solid amount of shooting. Everybody can be chucking rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And even Gloomspite, you could take a bunch of trogs, the Fellwater trogs are Rend 2 on their vomit attacks. That will chew through Bone Reapers pretty solidly. The Rock Guts that just do mortal wounds when they chuck their rocks. And again, mortal wounds are kind of an issue for Bone Reapers.
Yeah.
Shooters, just big units of shooters, probably not the greatest because they're like range 18.
Yeah.
If you're within 18 inches of a unit of Mortek Guard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of the Maw Tribe shooting is 12 inches, so.
Yeah, but they're a little more resilient than goblins and loincloths.
Slightly.
So, again, how do these armies deal with an army that's very combat-centric that just happens to have some solid magic and potential shooting backup?
Oh, pick me. I know.
Okay.
Pick me.
Oh,
Okay. Can I start with Ogre Maw Tribes?
sure.
Okay. So how would you beat OBR? Is that the question?
Yeah.
If you're Ogre Maw Tribes? I don't know. Just give the guy, just buy him a beer and let's say,
Try to bribe him.
yeah, let's just call it a draw and we'll go have a couple
Go
of
to
beers.
the greasiest gold tooth route.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Because and I'm going to hit this one because I've been working with the Maw Tribes a lot lately. Here's what you got to do. You got to be where the OCR Bone Reapers are not. You have to smash them on your terms and not on theirs. Because once they engage you the way they want to engage you, you've already lost. So you have to be where they're not. And you have the speed to do that if you mix in not just straight ogres. If you have, say, a Mornfang pack, or even more if you have a couple of Stonehorns.
Yeah.
And definitely the Frostlord on Stonehorn so that you can get the nice zappy snowball and, maybe crack those wounds off
That's a Thunder Tusk.
Catacross. Okay, whichever one has
The Stone Lord is the combat monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frostlord on a Stonehorn.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry.
Smashy one, yeah.
Yeah, but you're going to want, and again, it's going to take a mix. It's almost, I hate to say this, but it almost makes sense to tar pit the Mortek Guard with some of your Gluttons so that your Iron Guts and your Lead Belchers potentially can get where they need to be. It's a really, it's tough when you're playing Maw Tribes because every loss of a single body hurts.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts your damage output significantly. But you have to go into it knowing that you're going to have to kill some guys off in order to tie down some of these things, especially a unit of murder ponies. If you let them dictate where they hit you, like I said, it's already over. You have to basically use Mornfang or, some unit of ogres. Maybe you have a couple of free 3-man ogre units, Gluttons, that do nothing but go out there and tar pit the murder ponies. And keep in mind that guy's going to be smart enough to retreat and charge. He's going to blow through those Gluttons. But if you hold him up a turn, that's a turn that he isn't killing something super crazy valuable. So, and the biggest thing to remember with Ogre Maw Tribes is significantly better damage output than most anything else in the game. I mean, our flat baseline damage is 2, and most of our units, most of the good stuff has, like Iron Guts have a flat 3 damage.
Yeah, Iron Guts are
they're
no joke.
they're not swingy. So ogres are going to be doing 2 damage. You're going to be able to take out some of these Mortek Guard if you can get through the saves. It's an uphill battle, I'm telling you.
Well, you want to lean on your magic, too, because you have...
lot.
Was it like Bone Cracker?
Yep.
Reduces their armor save by 1. And just those little, like I was saying, 16, essentially they, mathematically they're like 16% increases or decreases, and the dice rolls are massive when you start stacking them. That's kind of the Bone Reaper's game. And I think ogres can actually play it better. Like their whole ogre magic has always revolved around giving your guys stat increases while also decreasing your opponent.
Yep. The biggest thing you have to watch out for with Maw Tribes is as they reduce your bravery, and a lot of times they're reducing your bravery without thinking about it. They're not spending points to do it. They have it just because they're there.
Yep.
And you have to be super careful and ready to spend the command point to ignore the battle shock for the unit that you think is most important.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful with those. He's going to try to take your command point away. So you need to make sure you pocket 1 or 2 at the very beginning. And if that means spending 50 points to get an extra one at the beginning of the game, maybe you have to do that.
Or they got some pretty solid War Scroll battalions too. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to come out of the gate with a handful of CP in your pocket.
Yeah, it is. And you'll need it because he may be taking them away from you.
Yeah.
And don't forget to heal everything you can and, try to fight somewhere around the maw pot so that you can keep that thing full.
Yeah, because ultimately, Bone Reapers are still a death army. Mm-hmm. They will win a war of attrition.
Yes.
Against pretty much anybody that's not also a death army.
And that's the whole thing is you have to ABC always be charging. You have to retreat and charge. You have to have those impact hits in order to do. And keep in mind, a lot of these impact hits are mortal wounds.
They're all mortal wounds. Yeah.
They're going to get 6 up, and that's it.
Yep.
So you gotta. That's how you have to hit them. You've got to just be where they're not. Dictate where you fight. Don't let them figure out where you fight. And if you see that list that has the murder ponies, you've got to engage them with whatever you have that's fast too, and get them to where they can't have free reign. You let a unit of murder ponies start monkeying around in your backfield, taking out your characters that are going to be doing the spell damage to Catacross, it's over. It's over. So just say concede and let's go have a beer. So anyway, that was Ogre Maw Tribes and how they fight OBR, or at least my way of thinking about it anyway.
So let's talk about Gloomspite Gits.
Sure.
How the Gits attempt to take on. This is a tough one because goblins don't really pack a punch. Their whole shtick is like we just flood the table with bodies and use board control to kind of dictate how we do things and try to play on the mission. But it doesn't mean that Gloomspite don't have access to some heavy hitters. Again, talking earlier about Troggoths.
Mm-hmm.
Troggoths have some ranged capability that would be an issue for some Bone Reapers, as well as in combat. They're no joke either, and they're pretty resilient. So in a game of attrition, they will definitely help you stick around longer.
Yeah.
And it's easier for you to outnumber the Bone Reapers if you
3-1.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the approach of like a mixed Gloomspite. So you're taking some Trogs, you're taking some Moon Clan Gits, you're maybe taking some Squigs. If you want to lean heavily into one of these sub-factions in the Gits book,
Squig.
If you want to go like Squigs, if somebody is taking taking these little units of Mortek Guard and then like one big one, and they have, because a lot of these Bone Reapers lists I should have touched on was Catacross and then like Arcan the Black.
Yeah.
Or and if they wanted more bodies, they would take Catacross and then just like a Bone
Vokmordian or a Soul Mason.
Yeah, well, not even Vokmordian, just like a cheap other second character.
Yeah.
And so what you could do is if you have Squig Riders would be great at jumping over and getting into the backfield. And the Squig Riders can definitely take on stuff like the Bone Shaper, whoever that secondary
Soul
character
Mason,
is. They could even give Arcan a bit of a run for his money. He's a very efficient character, but he is very squishy.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah.
And like I said, you could try to take out the Mortek Crawlers with them, where then you let like your regular Squig herds or your Boingrot Bounders or your Mangler Squigs, if they need to get in there, charge in. This is where that ability that the you can give to your general, where they charge in, hit, and then retreat before the opponent gets to swing. Huge for you.
Yes, that is, and that's why I said that I think, in my view, Squiglanch is the only way to really make sure that you have a fighting chance.
Yeah.
So,
whereas, like, if you wanted to go troll heavy, you're going to be very limited on your board control and your board presence, because Trogs are not terribly cheap, especially when you start putting like a dank hold boss out there. I don't know. The Queen also pretty solid. Sorry, not the Queen, the Hag, the Troll Hag. And she can, dole out a spell that gives -1 to be hit with range. But again, the Mortek Crawlers with Catacross probably hitting on. They go from a 3 to a 2 back to a 3.
Yeah.
Still going to be pegging. Yeah, it's pretty rough.
That's a hard one
to deal with that. And then as far as like trying to get into the backfield to deal with them, you might be eating catapult shots the whole time. I guess you just kind of try to focus all your damage and try to alpha strike that big Death Star block off as best you can. And hope that, because there's a lot of swingy damage with Trogs, especially like the Trog boss with his D6 damage club. If you want to take regular Dankhold Troggoths, which aren't bad, they're 10 wounds a pop and they don't degrade as they take damage. Yeah, they're expensive, but that's a lot of punch. Get a handful of those into some regular Mortek Guard. And now that Petrifix Elite isn't what it was,
Yeah, I know.
they're not as disgusting in con.
Right.
They're still really good. They can burn
Really,
one
really
command point to reroll all failed armor saves.
Yeah.
That's really strong.
That's huge.
But if you're getting in there with like Ren 2, which is what a lot of these trogs have,
Yep.
they're 4 up, goes down to a 3 up generally with Catacross, but now it's back up to a 5 up. 5 up re-rolling, you're going to get some damage through.
Well, and I think something else with the Gloomspite is you've got to remember all those great ways you have of lowering the enemies to hit. So, I mean, you got Fellwaters, you got Troggoth Hag who can start stacking up these -1s, -2s to hit. And now you're making the Mortek Guard or even the Murder Ponies, now you're putting them into the realm of believability.
Yeah.
And once you start making them a 4 or a 5 up to hit, now you're starting to say, I can fight these guys on an even keel. So,
yeah, like a spell like Itchy Nuisance be pretty
Yeah.
clutch. You get a bunch of your trogs into that big 40-man unit, and then they have to fight last.
Geminids be a nice little thing.
Yeah.
You know, that'd be super huge. What was it? Barbed nets? No.
The Netters.
Yeah, the netters. Yeah, all these different ways of impact, because they don't really have any way to stop it from happening.
Right.
So it's you got to look at how to make them worse at combat, because two things are going to work against you. Your bravery sucks, and it works even worse because they're so good at making your bravery worse. So when you decide to have that big fight with that Mortek Guard unit, you got to be ready for it. You got to make sure you've stacked up the -2s, maybe get down to a -3, make them hit on 5s. And all of a sudden they're just not as.
And to be fair, that's dictating that combat isn't going to be out of the realm of possibility because the Bone Reaper army is so small.
Yeah.
And they tend to focus all their attention on making that one unit really strong. So you just kind of have to get in there and bash helmets until one side falls down. Now, from like a general Gloomspite side, like if you wanted to take Moon Clan, I know it's been knocked down with the new General's Handbook where you can only take 3 endless spells.
Yeah.
But I think you still lean into the magic and
Yeah.
just kick out as many mortal wounds as you can. Maybe take Skagrot so that you can dictate where the moon is, because if they're taking Arcan, you can almost go toe-to-toe with Arcan with enough Goblin Wizards. Yeah, Arcan's really good at magic. But if you can put the moon on him, he's -1, so now he's only +1 to cast.
Yep.
Still really good.
Still good, but
that helps.
But a lot of the spells also are on high numbers. So
Yeah, so and just throw endless spells out there and try to get some mortal wounds in on Catacross and whatnot, and Catacross and company.
Purple Suns.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, as far as like the spiders go, I didn't really think about spiders too much because spiders are such a hard armor to get your hands on. They're all direct only. You have to like really focus on that's what you want to do. That being said, they do have the ability to kick out mortal wounds. Every model in that army does mortal wounds.
Yeah.
Which helps.
Yep.
But every model in that army is also very fragile. They're fast.
Yep.
So you're really going to have to try to use that speed to your benefit and maybe try to flank. I don't know. That is an uphill.
It's the toughest
I've seen
one.
spiders in action. They are fragile. So
I still think if you're doing OBR, you got to be going with the squiggies, and you've got to remember. It's to me the hardest part with Gloomspite is you got to read your book, read it again, read it a third time. Then pull out all the keywords, figure out what applies to who, then read it again, because the synergies are crazy, but they only apply to certain groups. You know, we've talked about this before. What's bad about that book is the synergies don't apply across the whole of the book. They don't have a big wah that lets them all be in one happy family. So you've got to know exactly what you have at your disposal, and the Gloomspite do have amazing ability to generate command points. But keep in mind, you're going to need to hit pocket those things so that you can ignore the battle shock tests. It's critical because they're going to be lowering your bravery down 2 or 3 points. When you're looking at a bravery 3 and you've lost 15 squigs, you don't want to roll that die.
Yeah, squigs have like the worst bravery. But it almost works to your benefit because if you can charge in some squigs, regular squig herds, get them in there like a big fat unit of 24 of them. You lose a couple or whatever because you're also charging in with something else. And, and then you make that bravery test and you almost want to fail it horribly because everyone that blows up has a chance of doing more wounds.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you have options like that.
You do have options. I'm going to say it's going to be hard for anything in the Gloomspite to go up against a well put together OBR list, but it can be done.
It's pretty well understood that Gloomspite are in a bit of a...
They have a lot of uphill fights.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
But yeah, Gloomspite can do it. It's just super difficult. So what do you want to hit next?
Let's talk Oryx.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they destruction?
Oh, God.
I didn't read anything about them.
Warwick Clans. Now,
you know, I almost gave this one lip service because I was like, Alaric's going to take over.
Yeah,
so what do I need to be here for?
This one's near and dear to my heart. This one's interesting because again, the OCR Bone Reapers are a combat army. Auric War Clans are very much a combat army. Now, it's a combat that you don't necessarily want to get bogged down in if you're an Iron Jaws player.
Yep.
Because the Bone Reapers are better at it. That being said, does not mean that Iron Jaws can't absolutely put a licking on them.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to have to be smart and tactical about it. Now, one of the fun things that you could do with these big units of like Mortec Guard or even like 15 ponies is going to have a pretty big board presence.
Yeah.
Is how you use your cabbage.
Yes.
So you could throw your cabbage in at one end, and then you throw like 10 or 15 Ard boys in on the other end. And now the Bone Reaper, that big unit of Mortec Guard can't split itself up too much because it has to keep coherency at all times.
Yeah.
And anytime that a cabbage gets in on the tippy end of a unit and it gets to go full ham and it doesn't receive really anything in return, and that's pretty big.
Yes.
And if you take something like the Ard Fist, you can recycle those Ard boys back.
Yes.
So even if you do lose them, it's a war of attrition that particular build can almost run with. You don't necessarily want to just keep getting bogged down on that, but that's an option, is to kind of string out their combat effectiveness. Now you also have pigs, and pigs got some built-in speed and some built-in punch. They're not going to take on Catacross by any means, but they do have the option to put some wounds on him to try to knock down his force multiplier ability, or they could definitely go back there and deal with those Mortec crawlers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is probably more of what you want to do. And then whatever you have left of dealing with the big Death Star unit and the Mortec crawlers, then they go after Catacross.
Yep.
Also, just one of the big things, blanket statement, is you always want to play the mission too.
Yes.
Whatever the mission
is.
Yeah,
that goes.
And if you understand, like, my army does not have the punch to deal with these guys in combat, try to tie them down and play the mission.
Well, and that you can use your boar boys. And I saw this effectively on a bat rap, using the boar boys to tie up the murder ponies. And when you deny them their ability to charge, you have taken most of the punch away from them. I mean, they're still very, very good, and it's going to be a fight. But if you have them locked up where they can't charge you, it's going to be a lot better. Sometimes that means throwing away a unit of boar boys, but you have to weigh whether or not it's worth it.
That's kind of what Gruntas do, man. You take 3-man unit of Gruntas, and they're just...
Gruntas. Sorry.
Well, the boar boys are on the bone splitter side, and we'll talk about them too. But
yeah,
so I think it's a pretty solid matchup. You just have to play tactically. And to be fair, that's kind of what you got to do with Iron Jaws anyways.
Yeah.
Like, even though you're playing these big brute, fighty dudes, you have to play them smart to get the most out of them.
You have to use their first turn speed. I mean, their ability to move that first turn. Is it almost 26 inches?
If you want to go the route of a Gore Fist, they move. I think they get like 16 inches or something on that first turn. Yeah, you could definitely get anywhere you needed to around most Bone Reaper lists.
And that's it. You got to throw them off their game early because you're not going to win the long, drawn-out fight. It's just not going to go your way. So, but I think Iron Jaws, of all the groups here, I think Iron Jaws has the best or tied with Maw Tribes for the best chance.
Yeah, Maw Tribes is really strong.
Yeah.
So one of the other approaches is with the Great Wall, which is a mix of the Bone Splitters and the Iron Jaws. And this allows you to start putting shooting in your army.
Oh, yeah.
Some shooting. It's not the best, but it does give you that option, which helps. It also does give you some cheaper bodies to put on the table to kind of either screen with or harass with, things like that. It gives you access to even more magic. And once you start incorporating both sides of the auric coin in the magic phase, it's pretty good. And also just the Great Walk table and how your army builds up and just gets better and better.
Yep.
All of a sudden, when you got brutes are a great pick in this because they kick out so much damage for having such a small board presence. 5 brutes can kick out tons of damage. So yeah, I think again, your mortal wounds are a bit lacking.
Sure.
So you're really just trying to grind down a death army, which is not the best position you want to be in.
But the thing is the OBR are more elite than you. So every loss for them hurts just as much.
Yeah, but they can put their losses back.
Catacross
puts 3 back every turn.
Yeah. But I mean, if he's lost 12, I mean, it is still, it's
an uphill. It's a bit of an uphill.
It's
struggle.
It's a slog. But I'm going to go back to the Big Wah, and you got 20 arrow boys is 60 shots.
It's 60 shots if you take them in a Cunning Rock.
I thought it was Big Wah. They got that too.
No, that's a Cunning Rock ability.
All right, so it's still 40 shots. Weight of dice is eventually going to be a quality, or a quantity is its own quality. So you want that guy rolling the saves. Even though he has good saves, you want him being forced to roll them because you never know. There's always that, look at all those ones. Damn it. So, yeah, and you got to understand that it's Iron Jaws against OBR is kind of elite versus elite, and they have a leg up on you because of their abilities. So you have to make sure that you pick the right time to smash them. And usually I'm not usually a proponent of the Alpha Strike, but against OBR, I think the Alpha Strike is like a prime tactic. You got to knock them off their game before they can knock you off yours.
Now, from a Bone Splitters perspective, I think this is where the Bone Grins come into play really well. This is the subfaction of the Bone Splitters where their army ability is enemy units within 12 inches of any friendly Bone Grins unit at the start of their charge phase must attempt to charge and must make a charge move if it is possible for them to do so. In addition, any enemy unit within 3 inches of a friendly Bone Grins unit cannot retreat.
Oh,
so suddenly you can start dictating things on the board in a pretty good way.
Yeah.
You run around with some boars. Like if they're running the 15 Cavalos Death Riders, you put 5 boars 12 inches away from them. They have to come after you. They can't go where they wanted to go.
That's right.
If you do get into combat, they can't get away from you. They have to kill you down, which, again, your bravery's not strong.
Yep.
And they do a bunch of bravery debuffs. They hit like a freight train. They could chop you down.
They can do it, but again, that's why you need to hit them first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that subfaction does a lot of work. Also, the magic available to Savage Aurochs allows them to be really fast. You can cast Breath of Gorkamorka on a unit. It doubles their movement and gives them fly.
Holy hand grenade.
If you happen to roll a double when you cast that spell, it triples their move characteristic, and they still have fly. So you can fly right over that big screen unit, 40 Mortek Guard or whatever.
Yeah. And get right to the crawlers or the catacrosses or
and they here's what you do. Here's a fun approach. So you want to talk about a fun Alpha Strike?
Okay, give me.
You cast that spell on a great big unit of big stabbers.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. And you fly the big stabbers over the lines in the catacross.
Oh God.
You charge him because, oh, you know what though? Catacross isn't a monster, and these guys fight monsters. You know who they'll slap down real quick though is Arcan,
Oh yeah.
and you won't have to worry about magic anymore.
Well, is Nagash a monster?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Nagash is a monster. I don't think
So-
you really see Nagash too much.
No, not really.
Not competitive.
Not in a
Reaper's
I want to win
list.
list.
Yeah.
In a fun list.
Is Catacross a monster? He can't be.
No, he's not a monster.
Yeah, no, I didn't think so. Darn it. Well, okay. They still, however, have 3 attacks apiece at Ren 2.
Holy.
So if you Alpha Strike him,
Arcan's gone.
well, even Catacross, if he hasn't had a turn yet
Yeah, that's true.
to get his command ability off, he's on a 3-up. It goes to a 5-up. And every one of these that gets through is D3 damage. I'm not saying you'll kill the dude in one shot.
But you'll definitely knock down a lot of those buddies that's riding with him, and that's what you have
And
to
his
do.
force multiplier
Yeah.
suddenly is not so much of a thing.
I mean, because, 1 to 3 wounds. I'm sorry, I was wrong earlier. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was right.
Yeah, his damage chart's weird to read.
Yeah, it's very strange, because the Prime Necrophoros, Aviarch Spymaster... Okay, I'm sorry, the Prime Necrophoros is the last one that dies. Or no, he's the first one that dies. Forget it. He's the first one that dies.
Flailing wildly. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I was right earlier.
So, yeah, I think there's some fun stuff. And, in bone splitters versus bone reapers,
Mm-hmm.
they all like to bone. They're a bit more of a rounded army. They have a lot of combat, a lot of movement, shooting, magic, as opposed to like the Iron Jaws have no shooting.
They're just in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe it's not the big wog that's the key. It could be bone splitters. Because is the
Possibly.
Mortek Crawler a monster?
I doubt it.
I
Seriously
would doubt it too. Let me look it up real quick. But yeah, I think
It's
you're
already
right.
so limited by being an artillery piece.
That's true. That is quite true. No War Machine.
Yeah, War Machine, not artillery. But I mean, that's kind of an approach that I would take with Orc War clans.
Yeah. If you have a bunch of old bone splitters, you might do better than Iron Jaws, really.
Maybe.
Although I think Iron Jaws will still, I think you crank out enough damage. And as long as you're able to recycle and move, charge, move, retreat, charge.
I think the problem with Iron Jaws, and this is also kind of an issue with Bone Splitters, is that pretty much the best you're ever going to get out of Iron Jaws is Rend 1.
Yeah.
And Bone Splitters just don't really even have Rend, other than the big stabber that I just talked about.
Yeah, at that point, you're relying on weighted dice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, and both of them are capable of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And with the War Chant buff, you can make it so that what does get through does hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of difficult. Ogres definitely, with the Iron Guts, there's a lot of rend there.
Yeah, there's rend as well as flat 3 damage.
Yeah, so and then and that's kind of the issue too with the Gloomspite, is the regular squigs are looking at best rend 1.
Yeah.
Manglers can put down some damage, but
Yep.
you don't want to be relying on Manglers. They're so swingy in their output that if that's the backbone of your army, you're in a tough spot.
I hate to say it, but if you're playing Gloomspite against OBR, you either drew a bad matchup or you're playing for fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if it's one of those where if you rock up to the tournament and your game 1 is OBR versus your Gloomspite, it's like, wow.
Well, I guess I won't be going to the podium this time.
I won't be going X and 0.
Play the mission.
Yeah, that's right.
Focus on that mission. You can still potentially eke it out. There's been times where I've played armies in a terrible matchup and I just said, F it. I'm focusing on getting these points.
Just get the objectives and do what you got to do. And, the beauty of AOS now is we're seeing a lot more missions that are objective oriented.
Yeah.
And not kill this, kill that, so yay.
Which helps.
All right, Sons of Behemoth.
Sons of Behemoth.
Or SOBs.
These big SOBs.
So this is truly Theory Hammer.
Yeah, this is all speculation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to lie. I think Sons of Behemoth are in a rough spot against Bone Reapers.
I don't know. Let me just give you the pros and cons.
Okay.
Sons of Behemoth, you got rend everywhere. Everything has rend.
Okay.
All right. You have decent shooting attacks. And in fact, you have some really good shooting attacks. Problem is, you have to be close. Again, it's a destruction thing. You have to be close. We haven't learned longbows yet. So, I mean, Drog's halitosis is, it's a shooting attack. It's going to pump out the wounds. Another big thing is one of the shticks for OBR is knocking down your bravery. Single model units in SOB doesn't do bravery checks just like them. So if you're running around with a bunch of single man units, or single giant units, no battle shock. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
And you got to look at your plethora of wounds per model. That is big, along with the immunity to instant death, which is nice. The problem is you're not going to play in the magic phase all that much.
At all.
Okay.
I mean, you have an artifact that you can take that makes you cast like, it doesn't make you a wizard, it just makes you cast like a wizard. One. That's the best you'll get. Yeah,
so you're not going to be able to stop the buffing and all that stuff. So get over that. It's going to happen. You have no battalions, so every drop is a drop. So if you do go with a lot of those single giant units, you're probably going to be seeding first turn, which is bad.
Yeah.
On the good side, just about everything has a 4-up save. So, I mean, that's kind of nice.
The big dudes have 4-up.
Yeah, the big guys.
The man crushers will be doing all the work.
5-ups.
5.
Yeah.
And pretty much everything in a Bone Reaper's army has Rend 1 and can, if they take Petrifex Elite, goes up to Rend 2.
I know. It's going to be, you're going to have to use your giants, your mega gargants.
Yeah.
You have to make 0 mistakes with SOB.
I think that's where you'll be anyways with Sons of Bahamut.
Yeah, you're going to have to make absolutely no mistakes. And everything that is normally swingy has to swing your way.
I don't know. And again, this is all speculation. We could be wildly wrong. The way I view Sons of Bahamut, the list I would take is a...
Kraken Eater.
Yeah, 3 Kraken Eaters. No, is the War Stompa and 9 Man Crushes. Because it's going to give you a lot of board presence. The War Stompa makes the Man Crushes exponentially better.
Yeah.
Which is big.
It's almost required.
Yeah, if you're going to go that approach. Now, I do think also taking like 2 Kraken Eaters and like 6 Man Crushes is also very viable. Objectively, the Kraken Eater is the best of the 3.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the other 2 are bad.
No.
He is just, he's more utilitarian. In an army where you don't have a lot to work with.
Yeah.
You kind of need your models to do more
flexible.
than one role. So, and he can do that, which I think is what makes him the best.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that being said, even with 2 Kraken Eaters and 6 Man Crushes, I mean, that is a lot. When you sit on the objectives, you will outnumber the OCR Bone Reapers. So you will hold objectives. They will have to kill off all your giants.
Until that 40 block walks up.
Yeah, but even 3 Man Crushes or your 2 Kraken Eaters will outnumber them.
Yeah.
Or a Kraken Eater and a Man Crusher, which is pretty big. And you have 35 wounds. I mean, they're not going to chew through that instantly. I don't know. The thing about Sons of Bahamut that gets me, man, is that Man Crusher and how for some reason they thought it was necessary for a 12 wound model to have 5 wound brackets.
Yeah.
And that to me is just a little excessive.
Yeah, it's a big penalty for them. And honestly, what I really don't like about the Gargants, the Mega Gargants, is the swingy damage. Everything is on a D3, D6 damage. You
they have a flat 2 on the club.
Well, in some case, like for the Gatebreaker, it's a 3 on the flail, but everything else is 2 on the clubs. But
that Gatebreaker will do money on that big 40-man block, right? Because he goes up to 10 attacks every time.
Yep.
And what's his rend?
2s and 3s.
You know what? If you see, and this is why I like the War Stompa, right? Because he can do the ability that gives all of your Man Crushes the ability to throw a rock.
Mm-hmm.
So you could move up, launch a whole bunch of rocks at that unit, and then charge in.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if you're dealing with like 9 giants and a big boy, you can't really do enough damage. But you might take down 2 of them, maybe 3.
But the thing about it is how many times are you going to be able to have all of that in the combat at once when you have to cover the whole board to cover the mission.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, man, it's such an interesting toss-up in my head. And again, this is all speculation, right? We've yet to really see how this pans out on the table. It's kind of fun to theory hammer it.
Yeah.
It is also kind of fun to think about it visually in my head.
Oh, I know.
How many big giants
God.
running across the table against like this lined up phalanx of elite
Yeah.
death.
Bone
You know,
reapers.
yeah. It is a cool visual.
It is.
You know, Catacross will make real quick work of a man crusher, but you know, if you get a one of the big boys into him.
Well, and again, I think the key is going to be to put wounds on Catacross early.
Yeah, but how do you do that as
a giant?
As the giants?
You're going to have to shoot him.
Your shooting's not far enough. It's 12-inch range.
I know. You're going to have to get to him. And that usually means you're going to have to go through the Mortek Guard. So,
that would be rough.
But if they're dumb enough to screen you with small units of Mortek Guard, you know, if they brought 3 10-mans and a 20-man or a 30-man, you'll go through that 10-man unit.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Or you just walk over them with Longshanks. That's one
true.
of the few times where Longshanks might actually come into play.
Yeah.
Because on paper, yeah, I don't think that's a particularly good ability just because of the range. But
yeah, it needs to be better. It needs to be made.
Well, they're
better.
just on such big bases, you know, and that's all. That's is somebody who's played a cabbage for years. You know, being on a great big base is, even if you got fly, it doesn't matter.
No, it's
hard to get anywhere. So
you just can't place it.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, now you know, the more that I sit here and just kind of run it through my head, that would be so cool. If anybody's out there doing bat reps, man, get your Gargants on the table against the Bone Reapers. I want to see how that plays out. Because I really don't have a lot for what you would do as a Sons of Bahamut player. I think you got to focus. And because again, these are these lists that I'm talking about, you know, and they've podiumed. So they're obviously doing work for the Bone Reapers. And they focus around what Catacross essentially can do for a Death Star unit.
Yes.
And if you can get into that Death Star and beat them down, possibly even kill them, then there's not much left. And if you only lost a couple of your man crushes in return, I think you're in a good place.
Won that exchange.
Yeah. Now, you're in a good place.
And I think we do need to cover one other thing at the end rather than the beginning when we should have. But these are those tournament winning lists. If you rock up to an OBR game and your opponent has one of every unit.
Oh yeah, they could be wildly different.
And yeah, or
they are bringing more ghasts. And
yeah, they have the
stuff
Archives,
and
they have some Stalkers, and they have a Harvester, and they have this generic stuff where
they don't have Catacross.
Yeah, this is not designed to be the beat face OBR. All these tactics change because now you're not looking at how do I chew through a 40 block or a 30 block of Mortek. So you'll have to kind of adapt everything we've said into how do I deal with, say, the Harvester that does have shooting and can shoot back and is going to do some weird wounds and have some weird stuff on me. You rock up to that list that has no Catacross, but a Liege Cavalos and every one of the other heroes. So that they are literally pumping out 10, 12 RDPs a turn. That whole idea of knocking out the heroes to chip away at that, it becomes a little meaningless.
Yeah.
Because, if you knock them down one, chances are they still have 15 to use.
Right.
So, just kind of think about it. Everything that we talked about today were against these lists that included Catacross and usually either Archon or another leader, and then basically a Death Star unit that is buffed up.
Yeah.
So if you rock up against that other, I don't want to say, but the kind of list like I'm going to put together a fun OCR Bone Reaper list that has a little bit of everything so I can play with all the toys. It's going to be a way different thing. At that point, you're going to have to look at what they're doing with each unit, what their goal is for that unit, and try to keep that unit from achieving its goal. And in a lot of ways, it becomes easier. The equation becomes easier, but it's still not easy because they have all the benefits of being OBR.
Right.
So I think in summary, we said it at the beginning, if you're fighting an OBR list, it's going to be an uphill fight for destruction, really, at where all these armies are right now.
Some more so than others, you
Yeah.
know, like Gloomspite.
Mm-hmm.
But Gloomspite's in a rough spot in
Sure.
general, you know.
But I think we did, I think there are ways even in Gloomspite to take what they do best away from them. And, with Gloomspite, you can't mess with their RDP generation. At the same time, they're only messing a little bit with your command point generation, and you can out-generate command points. So, yeah, he steals the one from you. But, I mean, if you do your Gloomspite right, you can be generating 3, 4, maybe even 6 a turn.
Yeah,
Command points.
Yeah,
So,
you can definitely get some on your side.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's different ways to look at it. And, again, it just goes back to look at what they want to do and take that away from them. Take the initiative away from the other guy. Make him make choices that he doesn't want to make.
Yep.
And you will basically force him into reacting to you. And with destruction, you got to use that speed and power to force him into that position of having to react to you all the time. Because he's not fast, with the exception of the murder ponies. He's not fast enough to be everywhere at once. And Catacross certainly is not going to go crossing the board to come hunt down one of your units. So make them pay for bad deployment and be where they're not.
Anything else you want to talk about? I think that was a nice,
really.
chunky.
That was like an hour and a half. I mean, we have a couple of breaks in there for silly looking stuff up. Yes, we looked stuff up while we're not that smart that we can rattle this stuff off.
Yeah, would be if we were getting games in, but
although we had great notes. I mean, you had a notebook. I had a whole bunch of printed pages.
So
did we not say we were going to bring the heat?
Yeah,
we brought some heat.
Start getting into some meaty subjects. If there's anything you would like
that's right
to hear, of like how your army or whatever can deal with another one, we can talk about it. Or if there's lore you want us to talk about, shout us out.
I mean, yeah, because we're going to pick a subject to deep dive into for just about every show. And not going to promise it's going to be AOS every time. I mean, we might jump hard into something 40K next time. It just depends on what hits us during the week.
Yeah.
So.
Alrighty then. There you go.
Done.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Consume. Bye.
If you would like to get in touch with us, you can reach us at our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/rollingbadpodcast, all one word. Our Patreon page is at www.patreon.com/rollingbadpodcast, again, all one word. The Twitter account for the show is at @rolling_bad. And our individual Twitters are, for me, at Bill Castello, BILLCASTELLO. And for Elric, it's at Elric Edge, ELRICEDGE. All of our guests on the show will have their contact information in that show's show notes. The music in the show is used courtesy of Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com and used under the Creative Commons license. The Rolling Bad Podcast is protected under the Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. Information for this license can be found at creativecommons.org.